Chapter 24:16, My fists are the biggest. The Empress humphed slightly, and as her palms waved, the power of regulation blasted from her palms. She herself turned into the flow of time. At one moment, she would be in the past, and in the next, she would be in the future, so bizarre that she could not be glimpsed. The red-clothed woman's strength had been greatly boosted under the effects of the Crimson Demonic Earth, and because of the Crimson Demonic Earth, she was close to the extent that she could not be touched by any attack. Thus, it was very difficult for the Empress's regulations of time to take effect on her, but there was not the slightest difficulty in exerting them on herself. The two of them clashed, and the regulations of time was indeed the highest level of regulations there was, and was also a major regulation that any realm would be equipped with. It was incomparably strong. It could only be seen that the Empress was beating down on the red-clothed woman, while the latter's counterattacks were all wasted effort as they could not hit their target at all. The red-clothed woman's defeat was only a matter of time, and it would not take too long either. Humph, to actually dare commit a crime against the line of Blue North, what brazen courage! Amidst a loud cry, two men arrived, each of their faces bearing a strong sense of pride. Yet when they saw how the red-clothed woman was disheveled, and how her black hair had all turned gray, they both paled in shock. Was this still their 19th junior sister that prized beauty like her own life? 19th junior sister, how have you become like this? I will come and help you. The two men rushed out at practically the same moment, but bewitching Maiden Ro humphed lightly. She shot out and stood in their way, rebuking the two men harshly. Step down. She was skilled in the art of enchantment, but she walked the path of royalty. Others would submit to her, worship her, and admire her, but it was not the type for seducing others. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have tacitly approved of her presence, either. With this exclamation, both men looked dazed. The gaze they directed at bewitching Maiden Ro was first vacant, but then became feverish. It was as if they had encountered their benefactor of 9 lifetimes. They wanted nothing more than to lower their heads and bow, surrendering even their lives without the slightest hesitation. Shen Hao couldn't help but stare. These two were both his junior brothers, and their strength had long since reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, but that woman did so as well. Yet without even a single blow, both of them had knelt directly. He could not accept this at all. The two men stepped down as commanded, while their eyes gazed feverishly at bewitching Maiden Ro. They only needed a word from her, and they would be willing to go through water and tread on fire. The red-clothed woman almost threw up blood. Weren't you guys saying that you wanted to help me? Now what the heck are you two doing? In a moment of distraction, she was instantly hit with a series of blows from the Empress. The heaven-destroying 9 swords slashed out, and she was covered with blood all over. Several places of her clothing had also been torn, and she looked incredibly battered. The Empress would not quit while she was ahead. She raised her hand slightly, and sent out another sharp gust with a finger. It turned into a flash of frightening sword chi which would kill the red-clothed woman. Please have mercy. Shen Hao hurriedly moved. No matter how lazy he was, there was no way that he could just stand by and watch his junior sister being killed. Peng, he managed to block this blow. An astonishing flush suddenly rose up on his initially fair face, as if he was drunk. This was because the Empress's sword chi was too harsh. Though he had resolved the blow, his blood had still been shaken. He felt he was close to spluttering out a mouthful of blood. He paled in shock. He had only known that the Empress was very strong, but after taking on this blow, he had a first-hand experience. No wonder his junior sister would be suppressed by the Empress even after consuming 2 mouthfuls of Crimson Demonic Earth. The Empress's eyes sharpened, exuding a boundless dominance. She was going to kill a rebellious subject, and someone actually dared to stop her? She would just kill both of them, then. Ling Han grinned, and said, "Wife, just stop for a moment." He thought that Shen Hao was quite a nice guy, and it would be a pity if he died just like this. Only then did the Empress dismiss her intention. She walked back, her arms crossed behind her back, dominance and imperial might spreading out from her. Bewitching Maiden Ro also giggled, and stepped back. Only at this did the two men snap out of their trance. They looked at one another, and both could see an intense shock and lingering fear from the other's eyes. If bewitching Maiden Ro had commanded that they killed each other just now, they would definitely have executed her command without the slightest hesitation. It was not certain whether they would be dead or still alive now. Thinking about how their lives had been easily taken control of by another, their hearts squeezed strongly. Ling Han heard how the two of them had said, "the line of Blue North," and thus asked Shen Hao, "Are you all the disciples of Blue North King?" The red-clothed woman had gotten her breath back and shouted at Ling Han, "So you are afraid now?" Ling Han looked towards the red-clothed woman, his eyes clear and calm, but an aura was still pressing down on her. The red-clothed woman felt as if a large rock was weighing down on her heart, and even breathing was difficult for her. Her face instantly turned pale. "You are asking to be beaten." He moved, and Pa sent a slap through the air at her. When his hand rose, the force of the blow had already arrived. With a resounding slap, the red-clothed woman stumbled backwards suddenly. She opened her mouth, and spat out a few broken teeth along with blood. "Brother Ling, though my junior sister speaks fiercely, she really does not have any malicious intent, so please have mercy." Shen Hao hurriedly stepped in, the astonishment in his heart even stronger. Every single member of this group of 4 had powerful strength, and was completely different from the outsiders that they had imagined. Only then did Ling Han withdraw his gaze. Turning towards Shen Hao, he smilingly asked, "So you guys are just planning to stake a claim on this territory and say it's yours so that you can seize the celestial tree inside for yourself? This is the territory of the line of Blue North, so the celestial tree naturally belongs to us," a man that had previously been enchanted by bewitching Maiden Ro immediately declared to Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled. "Are you joking with me? Who's joking here?" That man was both furious and embarrassed. He was not a 3-year-old toddler. Ling Han brandished a fist. All the treasures in this world should naturally be obtained by those who have big fists. I think that my fists are the biggest. Does any one of you disagree? The man wanted to say something, but he could not say a word. Ling Han and his group were too strong. He and his companions had not been able to even unleash a single attack before being directly defeated. Now, they did not have the slightest bit of confidence left. "Brother Ling, even if you chase us off, it would be useless." Shen Hao shook his head. "How so?" Ling Han turned to look at him. "Do you see that? This mountain fog can prevent entry." Shen Hao pointed at the valley that was enshrouded in fog. "This is the first layer of protection, and after entering, it would be extremely dangerous. The closer you get to the celestial tree, the harder it is to approach. Though we have claimed this place, none of us have actually gotten near that celestial tree." Ling Han nodded. "I know that. If someone had only staked a claim in the territory, it could not possibly be so difficult to harvest the celestial seed, because there would ultimately be someone who could obtain it. Furthermore, the very hardest trial would be the celestial tree itself," Shen Hao continued. "It is only hearsay for me as well. The celestial tree possesses an amazing ability to flee and escape. No power can trap it. If it does not wish to bestow the celestial fruits to you, even a celestial king would be completely helpless." Ling Han's determination naturally would not waver with just a few words from him. He voiced some detailed queries to Shen Hao, and soon gained a deeper understanding of this celestial tree. Where did the shards of celestial seeds come from? They were the pollen that was scattered when this kind of celestial tree was in its blooming season, or the fragrance that was contained in the fruit which spread through the winds, and was thus obtained. The reason why Shen Hao and the others stayed here was firstly that they wished to obtain a complete celestial seed, but this was too difficult. Hence, they settled for the next best thing, planning to capture some of the rotten fruit, leaves, or the like that would be shed from the celestial tree. Gathering little by little would eventually accumulate, and they would then be able to piece an incomplete celestial seed. Chapter 24:17 The Celestial Tree Appears. In the sky, the sun was gradually setting, and the moon was slowly rising. After a long time, the moon hung in the middle of the sky, and the fog in the valley suddenly evaporated completely. "We can go in now." Shen Hao was leading the way ahead, while Ling Han and his group followed behind. Meanwhile, after the red-clothed woman and the others glared harshly at the receding backs of Ling Han and his group, they turned around and left. They were going to return and file a complaint. A few outsiders actually dared to covet the celestial tree. The Blue North King would definitely be furious when he found out. Who knew, he might personally move to deal with Ling Han and his group. It was very strange. Previously, the fog in the valley filled the air, and one could not even see the fingers on his own hand. In a daze, he would somehow circle back out. Now, however, not even the slightest bit of fog could be seen. Though there was no sunlight, underneath the gentle and beautiful moonlight, everything was an elegant white, and everything could be seen very clearly. It was not difficult to traverse this stretch of path. Shen Hao walked very quickly. Ling Han and the others naturally would not be so easily trusting. Every step they took would be placed on the part of the ground that Shen Hao had already walked over, which they also memorized firmly. After they had walked for around 5 kilometers, the scene ahead suddenly opened up to a wide panorama. It was like they had walked into a plain. "Look over there," Shen Hao said, pointing at a cliffside in the distance. Ling Han and his group all focused their eyes and looked over. Vaguely, they could see a tree that was growing on the side of the cliff. It was only 3 feet tall, and had very dense leaf coverage. Meanwhile, 5 bright red fruits were growing in between the leaves, and were covered in veined patterns that could not be described with words. It was not known whether it was because they were too far off, but they could not see the clear details of the veined patterns. "It should not be because of distance," Ling Han soon declared, shaking his head. The Empress nodded to express her agreement. "We are only 3,000 meters away from that celestial tree, at most, but when we look at that celestial tree, it seems blurred. This is not normal. When will the fruits ripen?" Hu Niu was more concerned about this. Shen Hao thought for a while. "Even my master does not know when the celestial tree would bloom or bear fruit. This celestial tree has always been public knowledge as well, so no one knows the exact details of the time. But in the last few months, the fruity fragrance could be smelled. According to ancient scrolls, the time of ripening for the fruits should be within the next 10 years. "It's here," he suddenly exclaimed, immediately falling to sit on the ground. Ling Han and the others also smelled a refreshing fragrance. It could not be clearly described what kind of fragrance it was, but it was extremely fragrant, revitalizing, and soothing, as if they had fused with great Tao. "This fragrance is emitted by the celestial tree. Don't miss out on it. It can be used to form a celestial seed," Shen Hao advised. Ling Han and the others were all curious. The shards of celestial seeds were really everywhere. They still sat down cross-legged, and inhaled that fragrance, experiencing it carefully. A kind of enlightenment surged in their minds, where a tiny point of light took form, as if to nurture something. So this was a celestial seed shard? "Seems like the celestial seed is very easily formed," Hu Niu immediately declared. Ling Han also thought that it was odd. Going by this manner, as long as he inhaled a few more breaths of the fragrance, he would be able to condense a complete celestial seed without needing too many years. Shen Hao asked them, and when he found out about their circumstances, he couldn't help but stare speechlessly. After a long while, he finally asked in a stuttering voice, Could it be that you guys have the legendary celestial physique?" "What celestial physique?" "Celestial physique means that you are connected with great Tao, and are prodigies that can easily condense a celestial seed," Shen Hao explained. "It is practically impossible for such a person to appear on the celestial path. I heard that this kind of monster could only appear among the outsiders." Ling Han gave an "oh." This so-called celestial physique should be referring to monarch tears, an existence that was destined to be capable of becoming a celestial king. Thus, it was especially easy for them to form a celestial seed, and through previous efforts, they had already gained the approval of the heaven and earth. Forming a celestial seed and becoming a celestial king was only going through the motions. But a celestial king like that would have limited strength because this was pieced together from incomplete celestial seeds. How could it compare to a naturally complete celestial seed? Ling Han explained this to the three women, which also gained the latter's agreement. Three of them were monarch stars, so it was naturally even easier to form a celestial seed, and Ling Han himself had actually surpassed the usual range of monarch stars, and his evolution index had already broken through to 11. They were all nurturing celestial seeds. This was completely fine as long as they did not allow the celestial seed to sprout in their bodies at the last step and grow into a celestial tree. They could discard it at any moment, and start again from the beginning with a new celestial seed. Nurturing a celestial seed could help them experience the Tao of Celestial King tier in advance, which would be greatly beneficial for their future cultivation. Take Shen Hao and the others for example. They were also condensing a celestial seed as they waited for the celestial fruits to ripen. If they could harvest it, they would exchange the celestial seed without the slightest hesitation. Ling Han experienced it carefully. Even an incomplete celestial seed represented the regulations of heaven and earth, which reached directly to the essence. Only once he figured out the essence of the regulations would he be qualified to surpass regulations and become a celestial king. Why do we not go forward a little more? Ling Han suddenly asked. If they stayed here, a considerable amount of fruity fragrance would be dispelled by the winds. Shen Hao shook his head. It cannot be helped. It is too dangerous ahead, so we can only be here. Master, too, has come before, but the moment he came, the celestial tree immediately fled. Hence, it is impossible to rely on the power of a celestial king to harvest the celestial seeds. This was quite interesting. Ling Han did not stare blankly on the spot. He immediately stood up, and walked slowly onwards. He was not satisfied with just absorbing a little pollen here. Since he would be contending for the fruits in future, he first had to probe the path ahead of him because the fruits might only ripen 10 years later, but it could also be tomorrow. The time for this celestial tree to bear flowers and then fruits was a whole epoch. The time of around 10 years would in comparison be like the time it took for an ordinary person to breathe in, which was extremely short. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When Ling Han took the 5th step, he abruptly discovered that the valley had changed. Previously, the moonlight was as clear as jade, yet now it was filled with an eerie feeling. It was like he had entered into a pit of ghosts all of a sudden. This was not just a feeling. A coldness suddenly rose up from underneath a rock, and it quickly formed a skull, which released a sharp cry as it pounced towards Ling Han. The cry was incredibly shrill, as if it wanted to burst Ling Han's eardrums with the volume. Ling Han humphed. In the clear and bright universe, how could demons and ghouls be allowed to do evil? Disperse quickly. Humph. Pa, that skull immediately exploded. Holy. Fuck. Shen Hao saw this, and his heart involuntarily squeezed strongly all of a sudden. It was not that he had not attempted to barge past here. He had similarly been faced with this skull. Though he had indeed managed to barge past, he was battered and exhausted. It was only after great effort that he managed to deal with it. Yet with a shout from Ling Han, the skull was shattered. The gap in strength was really as wide as the gap between heaven and earth. Ling Han was not concerned over Shen Hao's shock. He continued forging onwards, and very soon, another rock glowed, and turned into a sword that swept out towards him. Ling Han waved a fist, and pang, this sword was suddenly shattered into bits. Shen Hao was dumbstruck once more. In the past, it was this sword that had forced him into retreat. He had only managed to pass this sword after a whole 7 attempts. Ling Han must have consumed the crimson demonic earth, he thought. Otherwise, he would really lose his mind. Ling Han strode onwards. Every rock and every bit of earth here could become a great weapon that would launch an attack at him, but they were all dealt with by a punch or a shout from him. He was a supreme monarch star. To say nothing of body art, Merely in terms of regulations, his vitality index reached as high as 4,600 points. Chapter 24:18, Barging Through. In one go, Ling Han walked 1,500 meters ahead, as easily as if he were walking on flat land. His speed finally slowed when he reached this point. The attacks that manifested again had become increasingly frightening, and could no longer be resolved with a single punch or kick. Shen Hao shook his head internally. He, too, could barge to this point, but he would have long since consumed crimson demonic earth. Otherwise, around 150 meters would be his limit. Xiao, xiao, xiao. A few figures dashed over, and they all looked to be young men. Senior brother Shen, they first called out toward Shen Hao, and then turned to look at Ling Han, who was in the distance. He's close to his limit, right? And here I thought he was all that strong. In the end, he's just a so-so. For an outsider to manage to walk to this point is already very impressive. They talked among themselves, all revealing a strong feeling of superiority. In their eyes, there was no way that Ling Han could advance further. Senior brother Shen, why have you brought them here? Someone demanded of Shen Hao. That's right. The others all nodded. This was the private property of the line of Blue North. Though it was practically impossible for them to obtain a complete fruit, merely inhaling some fruity fragrance here could help them become celestial kings in a few billion years. This was an amazingly great opportunity. Now that Shen Hao had brought 4 outsiders in, this would naturally affect their interests, which made them extremely displeased. Shen Hao merely responded with a lazy smile, and ignored them. Ahead of them, after Ling Han took another step, he saw a large rock glowing, which actually manifested into a golden rabbit. Xiao, the rabbit leaped, a pair of golden rays shooting from its eyes, blazing fiercely towards Ling Han. Ling Han greeted the oncoming attack with a fist. Hiss, when the golden light landed on his fists, it created a dazzling brilliance. How stupid can he be? To actually use his bare fists to withstand an attack of fierce light? When the newcomers saw this, they all shook their heads repeatedly, expressing their extreme puzzlement. 1,500 meters was a new threshold. After this line, the attacks here would become incredibly harsh, especially when it was this kind of golden light. It was filled with frightening destructive power, and could only be parried with pseudo-celestial tools. Ling Han actually used his bare fists to colch with it. Wasn't that just committing suicide? How opinionated. I'm just waiting to see his fists turn into ash. Those that had newly arrived were all jeering and mocking. In any case, this did not concern them. Furthermore, Ling Han was an outsider, so they naturally wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to be torn into bits. Golden light filled the space, but the scene that everyone anticipated did not appear. Ling Han aggressively charged out, his fists unscathed and uninjured, a crystalline light flowing from them and blasting towards the golden rabbit. Pung! The golden rabbit was instantly sent flying, a hole actually appearing in its chest. The new arrivals all felt their facial muscles twitch, lost for words. Meanwhile, Shen Hao smiled faintly. Previously, he had almost been scared to death by Ling Han, and now that he saw the expressions of these junior brothers of his, he felt pleased for some reason. I bet that he will not be able to barge past 2,250 meters, one of them said through clenched teeth. Obviously. Even Lord Master has said that from 2,250 meters onwards, that would practically be Celestial King tier attacks. What ascending origin tier would be able to block that? Someone immediately followed. Aside from Celestial Kings, no one can barge past here, but when Celestial Kings arrive here, the Celestial Tree would immediately escape. Hence, this is a problem with no solution. The Empress finally couldn't take it any longer. She glared menacingly at them. Shut up. The few of them were immediately about to flip out, but when they saw the noble, elegant appearance of the Empress, their mouths merely opened, and they could not say a single word. Ling Han sent out a series of over a dozen punches, and beat the golden rabbit till it burst with force. His steps paused slightly. The vitality index of the golden rabbit had reached about 4,500 points, and it should be known that the average peak stage of the consummate level ascending origin tier would only be 4,300 points. Only a monarch star would just barely reach 4,500 points. Ling Han was a supreme monarch star, so he reached 4,600. In other words, this rabbit was so strong that even ascending origin tier monarch stars would frown deeply. This thought merely flashed through Ling Han's mind and vanished. Ling Han continued onwards. Another insignificant-looking black rock glowed, and turned into a black wolf that released a howl at Ling Han. Shio, shio, shio. With this howl from the black wolf, multiple black-colored blades of wind were released from its mouth, and sliced out towards Ling Han. Instead of retreating, Ling Han forged onwards, sending out his fists in a fierce, extremely overbearing barrage. Pang, pang, pang. He aggressively charged until he reached the black wolf. He thrashed it now that he was close enough. In merely over a dozen punches, this black wolf was beaten until it burst, and turned back into a black rock. Strangely enough, there was not the slightest bit of damage to the black rock. Ling Han was curious, and picked up the black rock. After some thought, he turned back round and picked up that golden rock from before. When the others saw this, they all felt an urge to clap a hand on their foreheads and howl to the heavens. They had never seen someone like this who would pick up even rocks. This was no treasure at all, and could only show its might within the valley. Yet Ling Han curiously played around with the two rocks, but no matter how much energy he pushed into them, these two rocks did not have the slightest reaction. It was like they were just ordinary rocks. Even if they cannot show their might, they would still be good for slamming on others, Ling Han thought, and stowed these two rocks away, growing keen as well. He wanted to retrieve even more rocks. He forged onwards again, and more rocks manifested, launching attacks on Ling Han. The further he advanced, the fiercer these attacks became. When he was almost close to reaching the 2250-meter point, the vitality index of the rock's taken form had already soared directly to 4,600 points. In other words, even for supreme monarch stars, this would be their limit. Ahead, there was still a distance of 750 meters to the end of the valley, and the celestial tree was upwards of that point. Shen Hao shook his head. Even after consuming 2 mouthfuls of crimson demonic earth in succession, this would be the limit. No one could consume 3 mouthfuls in succession. That would not have the slightest bit of boost to strength. The person would only die immediately. The others were all filled with anticipation, hoping that Ling Han would advance further, and then get killed. Ling Han paused slightly, and then raised a foot, which he quickly placed down. Wang, a rock that was as high as 9 meters suddenly came to life, turning into a rock golem that was similar in height. Peng, 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 stepping on the ground, it caused even the ground to tremble as it raced towards Ling Han. Frighteningly fierce might spread out. It was like a primordial beast that had come from the primitive age, capable of destroying anything and everything. Finally, Ling Han did not dare to be careless any longer. He executed his strongest ability. Body art. Peng. He threw a punch, no longer holding back. A terrifying scene appeared. This rock golem had been shattered with a single punch. Fuck. 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 Shen Hao and the others were all frozen stiff, countless asterisk darting through their minds. They could not understand at all. Previously, Ling Han's battle prowess had clearly reached its limit, but why had he suddenly become so much stronger? This was close to reaching Celestial King tier battle prowess. This was practically a fatal shock. Could it be that he has just consumed crimson demonic earth? One of them asked in a quavering voice. Impossible. The others all shook their heads. If Ling Han had not consumed crimson demonic earth previously, how could he be so strong? In fact, he was even stronger than them when they had consumed the crimson demonic earth. I have heard before that though the majority of outsiders are very ordinary, there are also some amazing prodigies, one of them said slowly. Just like how we are obviously stronger against others of the same cultivation level. This is named King Tier. King Tier? The others heard this, and all appeared slightly proud. This was a good name, which they were very satisfied with. But above the King Tier, there are another 2 levels, the person from earlier continued. What? The others were stunned at this. They actually were not prodigies of the very highest grade? Chapter 24:19, Change of Attitude. These disciples of the Blue North King were all extremely arrogant, and thought that their aptitudes were some of the best. Otherwise, how could they have possibly gained the notice of the Blue North King? And now they were told that there were other stronger prodigies that were 2 levels higher than them. How could they possibly accept that? The man from earlier continued, Emperor Tier is superior to King Tier, and Monarch Tier is superior to Emperor Tier. King Tiers are invincible against their peers of equal cultivation level outside, and Emperor Tiers can still be invincible with a gap of a minor level. As for Monarch Tiers, they would be invincible even with a gap of 2 minor levels. Everyone was struck speechless. They knew themselves well. Before advancing into the ascending origin tier, they could only be invincible against their peers. Now that they found out that there were some that could actually be invincible with a gap of 2 minor levels, they could not accept it. The feeling of superiority that they had maintained for such a long time instantly collapsed. So, as it turned out, there really were such freaks in this world. Meanwhile, Hunyo scoffed, "You guys really are frogs at the bottom of a well. Monarch Tier is not the strongest. Above the Monarch Tier, there is still the Monarch Star, and there are another 2 levels above the Monarch Star itself." However, the levels higher than Monarch Star had no specific name, and only had the measurement standards of Evolution Index, which was respectively 11 and 12. Ling Han's Evolution Index had reached 11, but 12 was really hard to imagine. Hearing Hunyo's words, everyone was even more dazed, filled with disbelief. Ling Han was still bravely forging onwards. He was exerting his full might, and his body art was incredibly frightening. He could destroy an enemy with a single punch. This was completely the act of a celestial king, and also caused everyone to become distracted. They thought that Ling Han actually should be a celestial king who had deliberately disguised himself as an ascending origin tier. In just over a dozen breaths' time, Ling Han had charged to the mountain's side. Looking from this angle, that celestial tree was much clearer. He tried to climb the mountain. Instantly, a frightening pressure assailed him, which made him feel extremely heavy. He was like a rock that had been tossed into the sea, and could only sink downwards. Just this to make things difficult for him? Ling Han gave a shout, and a boundless light surged out of his body, and instantly bore up against the pressure as he climbed upwards towards the summit. Shen Hao couldn't help but shake his head, filled with ruefulness and admiration. Indeed, we cannot compare to him, because he has completely developed the human body's treasure troves. Human body's treasure troves, everyone asked, and even the Empress and the others turned to look at him. Every person is a tiny realm of their own, containing great power, and is equivalent to a treasure trove. If one could completely unleash his power, his battle prowess would be supreme. Shen Hao said solemnly. This is what Master has said. Everyone looked solemn at this. Since this was what the Blue North King has said, it had to be a supreme truth. The Empress and the others nodded as well. Actually, Wally had said something similar, but it was too profound, something like if one's own quality was decreased by even a single gram, they could release power strong enough to destroy a planet. It could not be understood at all, but the basic meaning was the same: every single person was a treasure trove in itself. They had all been nurtured by the heaven and earth, and possessed the power of heaven and earth. As long as this power could be extracted, their battle prowess would be extremely terrifying. Amidst their stunned exclamations, Ling Han had climbed to where the celestial tree was. Because he was not a celestial king, the celestial tree did not flee. It seemed like this was natural order. If the person who needed the celestial seed could come here with his own power, the great opportunity would be easily reachable. Ling Han did not pluck the fruits directly. He merely watched those few celestial fruits and observed them. They had not ripened yet, and plucking them now would be too much of a waste. But even at such a short distance, he could not distinguish clearly the veined patterns on the fruits, as if there was a mysterious power that was concealing them. Ling Han waved a hand over at the Empress and the others, telling them to come over as well. Otherwise, if he proceeded to pluck the fruits, they would either be for his own use or be concocted into a Celestial King pill. However, if one used the Celestial King pill, their cultivation level would be eternally limited to the first heaven Celestial King tier. That naturally could not be done. The Empress and the others began to barge through. Their strength was also very powerful, but their vitality index was only around 4,500, and definitely could not compare to Ling Han's. Hence, they could only reach around the 1,500 meter point. Bewitching Maiden Row was even weaker. She was only a monarch tier, and was already battered and exhausted even before she reached the 1,500 meter point. They each took out some crimson demonic earth, which they consumed, and when their battle prowess had been greatly boosted, they forged onwards. Shen Hao and the others could see this clearly. At this, they were completely convinced. The Empress and the others had used their own power to barge to that earlier point, and had even surpassed them when they had already consumed the crimson demonic earth. With this simple comparison, the gap in their strength was extremely apparent. Unlike Ling Han, who had long since been tempered by the power of heaven and earth, and on whom consuming crimson demonic earth would have completely no effect, the strength of the Empress and all the others gained an astonishing boost. For Monarch stars, their vitality index would soar to 4,800, and for Monarch tiers, vitality index could also rush to 4,700, allowing them to sweep aside all obstructions. They were practically unstoppable. But the closer they got to the cliffside, the stronger their enemies became, which made their progress increasingly difficult. Thankfully, the three women worked together, and still managed to battle their way to the foot of the cliff. It was rumored that the closer one is to the heart of the celestial path, the more perfect the celestial seed would be. Then, it was clear that the difficulty level of obtaining it would be higher and higher. Ling Han shook his head internally. Looks like Bewitching Maiden Row was only limited to this. She had exerted her full efforts just to obtain the complete celestial seed here. If there was only the slightest increase to difficulty, she would definitely be unable to pass. True enough, the three women began to climb the mountain. Bewitching Maiden Row had managed to climb to the summit, but she was panting very heavily, as if she would pass out at any moment. We should train more here. I think stronger celestial trees would also be hard to approach, and it would be even harder than this in the future, Ling Han said. The Empress and Hunyao both nodded. Later, they would retrieve a celestial seed, but definitely would not use it to break through immediately. After all, this was just a complete celestial seed, but not a perfect one. Bewitching Maiden Row grimaced. The fact that she managed to become a monarch tier itself was already surpassing her own potential and limits, and she had to make another breakthrough now? That was really too difficult for her. They observed the celestial tree at close quarters, and only descended into the valley after a very long time. If the celestial fruits were ripe, there would be very obvious advance signs. The intensity of the fruity fragrance would be raised over 100 times. When Ling Han and his group returned, Shen Hao and the others all looked feverish. In their thoughts, there was absolutely no one that could pluck the celestial fruits. Thus, they had only placed their hopes that they would be favored by the heaven and earth, and the fruits would drop after ripening, and there would just happen to be one that coincidentally rolled to their feet. But the chances for this kind of possibility naturally was close to practically zero. But now? Someone really could pluck a complete celestial seed. Though absorbing the incomplete celestial seeds, and continuously piecing together and nurturing them, they would still eventually obtain a complete one. Compared to a naturally complete celestial seed, there was at least a gap of 3 times of battle prowess between the celestial kings that broke through with these different methods. Hence, they all rushed towards Ling Han and his group. Brother Ling, was it? There are a total of 5 celestial fruits up there, Yet there are only 4 of you. Why don't you sell the last one to me? Just name your price. No, sell it to me, I guarantee that my offer will be double of anyone else's. My offer will be 2 times higher. Mine is 5 times. I offer 10 times. They scrambled over themselves, and offered conditions that would scare even themselves. However, if they slowly accumulated incomplete celestial seeds by themselves, there would be no hope of completion without at least a few billion years. If they could become celestial kings in advance, no matter how high the price they had to pay was, what fear would they need to have that they would not be able to earn back what they had paid? Chapter 24:20, The Blue North Celestial King. Ling Han naturally would not be promising anyone. There was an exceedingly large number of people in his family that needed Celestial King pills. Even if he had 100 celestial fruits, that would not be too many for him, what more when there was only a single extra fruit now? Seeing how Ling Han was unwilling to agree to their offers, everyone's eyes bore hatred, but no one dared to show their resentment. The gap in strength was too wide. However, some of them had already left. They would seek out the Blue North King and make their complaints. Why should celestial seeds that were formed in their own territory be obtained by outsiders? They would ask the Celestial King for help, forcing Ling Han and his group to pluck the ripe fruits, and then hand them over to them. That was even better. Shen Hao sighed. Brother Ling, you guys are being too showy. This is just creating trouble for yourselves. What is it? Ling Han asked smilingly. You guys have proven that you possess the strength to pluck the celestial fruits, and no matter how strong you guys are, there is no way you can match a celestial king. Shen Hao shook his head. Those junior sisters and junior brothers of mine would definitely ask Lord Master to step out. By then, you guys will only be paving the way for others, and may even be in life-threatening danger. Ling Han was surprised. Why did this Shen Hao keep favoring outsiders instead of his own side? Such a personality was really hard to come by. Brother Shen, you are truly a very strange person, he said with a chuckle. Shen Hao grinned as well. I was born like this. Nothing I can change. Ling Han nodded. However, there is no need for you to worry about us, Brother Shen. Since we have come to the celestial path, we have naturally prepared ourselves. To say nothing of his terrifying body art, he had not used those several heaven and earth origin stars either. There was nothing better than that as an intimidation tactic for lower-tier celestial kings. Shen Hao naturally would not believe him. The gap between ascending origin tier and celestial king tier was far, far too large. There was absolutely no one that could breach this gap at all. However, since Ling Han was so insistent, Shen Hao couldn't be bothered to persuade him further. This was also part of his personality. Ling Han and his group sat quietly, absorbing the fruity fragrance of the celestial tree while they nurtured the celestial seed in their minds. Day after day passed, and other people finally arrived at the valley. These were outsiders. They had entered Blue North City at a much later time, but still knew about the existence of Crimson Demonic Earth and a complete celestial seed. Hence, they, too, had come here, hoping to test their luck. If they really managed to obtain a complete celestial seed, that would be reaching the sky in a single bound. Grandmaster Ling. Greetings, Grandmaster Ling. Greetings, Grandmaster Ling. When they discovered Ling Han, everyone hurriedly approached to pay their respects. He was a 5-star Grandmaster, someone even more awesome than a lower-tier celestial king. Who would dare to be disrespectful? Only now did Shen Hao discover Ling Han's identity. Realization dawned on him. No wonder Ling Han had such overwhelming confidence, and could be unafraid of even celestial kings. As it turned out, he was a great elite that could concoct celestial king tier alchemical pills. With this identity, even the Blue North King would indeed have to give him some face, unless the Blue North King could guarantee that he could prevent any news from leaking out after capturing Ling Han. Otherwise, there would definitely be countless celestial kings that would invade his territory. This kind of great alchemist was really too useful. More and more people had come to the valley. Mostly, they were king tiers and emperor tiers. Ordinary ascending origin tiers were still struggling on the Rainbow Bridge. If they managed to cross the bridge within 1 or 2 months, that would already be very impressive. Hence, with their strength, added with the aid of the Crimson Demonic Earth, Shen Hao and his group could not stop them either, and could only allow their entry. Thankfully, it was just a few hundred people, and would not have too much impact. Many people did not believe how difficult it was to traverse this valley, and insisted on crossing the valley. In the end, they naturally caused themselves a great amount of trouble. There were some that almost died, even. With more people that had suffered a loss, everyone naturally learned their lesson. However, there would always be new arrivals who thought highly of themselves, and were determined to test themselves. Ling Han sat quietly. Though he could only absorb some fruity fragrance now, and there was a sliver of celestial seed shard contained within, in essence, there was actually not much difference compared to a complete celestial seed. Hence, he studied the celestial seed in his mind. As greatest eternity everlasting physique was channeled, he imposed time acceleration effects on himself. A complete celestial seed merged with the cultivator would be able to grow into a celestial tree, and this would be a first heaven celestial king. And when the celestial tree bloomed flowers and bore fruit, seeds would grow again, and that would be a second heaven celestial tree. This process repeats itself 9 times, and that would be a 9th heaven celestial king. Every time the celestial seed grew, bore fruit, and grew seeds once more would be a transformation of regulations, advancing in the direction of greater strength. By now, Ling Han was already qualified to touch the threshold of celestial king tier. Thus, he studied the celestial seed shards, and attempted to understand the celestial seed and the Tao of celestial king tier at a more primary level. Unfortunately, this celestial seed inside his body presently was too incomplete, so the information he obtained was really just mere scraps, and he could not piece out much of anything. Unexpectedly, the Blue North King had not appeared all this while. It was unknown whether he was too busy to appear, or could not be bothered to suppress a few ascending origin tiers, or if it was not time yet, and he would wait until the fruits of the celestial tree fully ripened before appearing to force Ling Han to pluck the fruits and hand them over. In the blink of an eye, 7 years had passed. At a specific point in time on this day, the fruity fragrance wafted over, yet it seemed as if these celestial fruits were right underneath their noses with how astonishingly intense the fragrance was. The celestial fruits have ripened. Instantly, everyone's eyes became bloodshot. These were naturally complete celestial seeds. If they used this to become celestial kings, their battle prowess would be at least 3 times stronger than other celestial kings. 3 times. Yet though they were only 3,000 meters away from the valley, such a short distance seemed to be like a gulf, and it was completely impossible to cross this gulf at all. They could only stretch out their necks, and hope that a fruit would drop, and then roll to their feet with a gust of wind. Wang, right at this moment, a frightening pressure spread out, and a person was slowly walking out of the fog. This was too amazing. With the fog locking in the valley, someone actually managed to walk over? Master. Shen Hao and the others all knelt, paying their respects to this person that was walking over. This was the Blue North King. No wonder, only a celestial king could ignore the fog ceiling in the valley. Ling Han also looked over, and saw that this celestial king looked to be in his mere 20s. He was handsome and clean-cut, bearing an exuberant spirit of youth, and others would be filled with admiration for him. The Blue North King was enshrouded in brilliant light, but it was only limited to a single color. This very clearly told the masses that he was a first heaven celestial king. Now that a celestial king had appeared, a fragrant air fluttered in the air, signifying that the celestial king had obtained the doting favor of the heaven and earth, which was unlike heavenly venerable tier. The moment a heavenly venerate appeared, they would be struck by lightning, and if they dared to make a move, they would be further targeted by the heaven and earth. It was not impossible that they would even be killed. The red-clothed woman and the others tailed behind the Blue North King, following him blindly, reverent to the extreme. The outsiders also paid their respects. Though some of them had second heaven, third heaven, or even stronger celestial kings in the forces that backed them, in this place and time, they had to express due respect. The Blue North King raised his head slightly. He was used to the worship of everyone, so naturally would not be concerned with this kind of respect. With a turn of his gaze, he looked towards Ling Han and his group. That was very simple. In the entire area, it was only the four of them that had not knelt. They stood out too abruptly. I heard that you are a 5-star Grandmaster, the Blue North King asked, his tone still quite polite. Ling Han nodded. That's right. A great 5-star alchemist completely had no need to lower their head in front of a lower-tier celestial king. What more when Ling Han's own battle prowess was not much weaker than that of a first heaven celestial king either, and combined with his terrifying defense, it was not certain who would be the final victor even if they did really come to blows. The Blue North King smiled. Are you interested in staying to help me? Chapter 24-21, Fighting a Celestial King. The Blue North King extended an olive branch towards Ling Han. If this was outside, there would definitely be a great many people that would be laughing at the Blue North King for overestimating himself. As a mere first heaven celestial king, he actually wanted to recruit a 5-star Grandmaster? Did he not fear that the guest would be too powerful to the point of bullying the host? But in this place, even the strongest celestial king was only at the third heaven, which had imperceptibly lowered the status of a 5-star Grandmaster considerably. Hence, this recruitment venture of the Blue North King would not seem too abrupt. Ling Han broke into a smile. Thank you for your regard, Brother Blue North. However, I am only here for the sake of becoming a celestial king, and have no intention to stay too long on the celestial path. As long as he had walked the celestial path, he, too, would be a first heaven celestial king, and added with the label of a 5-star Grandmaster, he would definitely be much stronger than the Blue North King. Hence, there was no need for him to be humble in front of the latter. Moreover, his present strength was also endlessly close to the celestial king tier. If they really got into a fight, it was uncertain who would win between the two of them. The Blue North King couldn't help but raise a brow slightly. There were no 5-star Grandmasters on the celestial path. Hence, the fact that a 5-star Grandmaster was an equal to a celestial king was nothing but a myth to them, and now a mere ascending origin tier directly addressed him as Brother Blue North, causing a feeling of displeasure to rise up in his heart. This was the celestial path. No matter how great your background was outside, it was useless. There was no way that they could interfere here. However, as a celestial king, he naturally was not one who would easily show emotion. Hence, he stated evenly, all right, since Grandmaster Ling's ambitions do not lie here, I will not force the matter either. He paused slightly. However, this celestial tree ultimately belongs to the line of Blue North. Since Grandmaster Ling is interested, I naturally would not refuse to part with it. I shall bestow one of the fruits on Grandmaster Ling then. He only mentioned gifting one to Ling Han, but as for the remaining 4, his approval would have to be gained. Ling Han was unafraid, and did not back down as he asked, shouldn't all natural treasures only be obtained by those with the strength and fortune to come upon them? When everyone heard this, their heart throbbed strongly. Was Ling Han planning to publicly go against the Blue North King? Even outside, where the status of a 5-star Grandmaster was revered, the respect for them was still granted by cultivators. For example, celestial kings would be polite and respectful, but that was only on the surface. If any 5-star Grandmaster really went too far, a celestial king could still ignore them. After all, this was a world ruled by cultivators. This was the celestial path. A first heaven celestial king was an extremely powerful existence, and Ling Han actually dared to refute the Blue North King so directly. This naturally caused worry for those who were listening. Let's just put it this way. If the Blue North King really killed Ling Han, just see what celestial king of the celestial path would come and make trouble for the Blue North King for the sake of a dead 5-star Grandmaster? Not even one. Sigh, this guy was really treating the celestial path like the celestial realm. The label of 5-star Grandmaster was not as useful on the celestial path. The outsiders all shook their heads, while those from the line of the Blue North looked furious. Even Shenhao looked grim. The Blue North King was an extremely subtle person. He did not flip out even after having been refuted like this, and merely looked coldly at Ling Han, saying, "Young man, you are very outstanding. At such a young age, you have already gained such prolific achievement in alchemy, and it is also hard to find a peer that could match you in cultivation. In the future, you will definitely attain greater accomplishments. However, if you are too stubborn, you will be broken easily. If you show too much of your skill, you will not be able to live until then either." This was a threat from a celestial king. A fearful pressure spread out, and everyone felt their heart constrict, which was an indescribably terrible feeling. Yet Ling Han was unconcerned. The strength of his physique was in fact close to the celestial king tier. This was but mere aura, and he wanted to suppress him with just that? "I still stick by my words. All natural treasures would be obtained through destiny," he said, neither servile nor overbearing. The Blue North King chuckled, yet stretched out his right hand, and grabbed out at Ling Han through the air. Source power stimulated the regulations, turning into a giant golden hand. Multiple seals flickered to life. This was a manifestation of the Tao of heaven and earth. A celestial king had moved. Being impacted by just the slightest bit of shock wave, even the heavens were trembling, as if this realm was about to collapse. Ling Han's expression remained unchanging. In his eyes, a first heaven celestial king was really not worth much. He had already slaughtered many of them, and it was not just once, but thrice, and the strongest celestial king among them had even reached 5th heaven. Ling Han unleashed fists of fury, and channeled the terrifying power in his body. His attacks would be launched with his thoughts. Peng, a fist shot out furiously, striking towards the giant golden hand. When everyone saw this, they were all gaping in astonishment. This was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. A mere ascending origin tier actually wanted to clash head-on with a celestial king. Just how much was he overestimating himself? "You are courting death," the red-clothed woman and the others all declared coldly, especially the red-clothed woman. She had suffered too great a loss. She could not possibly recover her black hair, and there were also a great many wrinkles on her face now, so her hatred towards Ling Han and his group was naturally bone-deep. The outsiders were also shaking their heads. It looked like the Eastern Celestial Realm would be returning to a state when they had no 5-star Grandmaster from now onwards. Peng. Just when everyone was entertaining various thoughts, Ling Han and the Blue North King had finally clashed. A terrifying gust of wind whistled. This was a clash of the strongest power of the Celestial Realm. Heavenly Venerable Tier had surpassed the range of regulations, so it was not counted. Boundless light dazzled, and everyone felt like they had become blind. They could not see anything clearly, but their ears were filled with a banging cacophony, showing just how terrifying the clash was now. But after only a while, even their ears had lost hearing, and they could no longer hear anything. Because this commotion was too terrifying, and had surpassed the limits that they could bear. Everyone was bleeding from their 7 apertures, and felt their hearts beat like a drum, almost exploding. Most people only felt discomfort, but there were also a limited few that showed expressions of indescribable shock. A celestial king had already moved, so shouldn't Ling Han have been defeated in an instant? Whether it was being captured alive or being killed, it definitely was just the matter of a single movement, yet now the ruckus was not ending. The battle was still continuing, so what did that signify? The Blue North King had yet to defeat Ling Han. How is this possible? That was just a mere ascending origin tier, and even if he held the status of a 5-star Grandmaster, and that celestial kings would have to be polite and respectful, it definitely did not mean that his strength was really capable of making him an equal of a celestial king. At least 15 minutes later, everyone felt that frightening pressure had vanished, and their visibility was also slowly recovering. Their lost hearing was also improving. The plumes of dust that filled the skies dispersed, revealing 2 figures that were facing each other, arms crossed behind their backs. The Blue North King, as well as Ling Han. Gasp. When they saw this, everyone was dumbfounded, and even wanted to grab their heads with both hands, screaming that this was impossible. For an ascending origin tier to stand against a celestial king was absolutely ridiculous. This was something that was unthinkable even in dreams, yet had taken place in reality now. Who could believe their eyes? My eyes must have blurred. This can't possibly happen. It's fake, it's all fake. After a short moment of silence, a tsunami wave of noise arose. Everyone was rendered speechless, and seemed like they were hoping that someone could tell them that all this was just a dream. The red-clothed woman was dumbfounded. She had actually offended this kind of elite? If Ling Han had really wanted to kill her, then what could even the Blue North King have done? The former was not afraid at all. Only now did Shen Hao know what exactly Ling Han had meant by saying that they were prepared. His strength was powerful enough to match a celestial king, so he was naturally unafraid. Your strength is inconceivably powerful. Blue North King said, his tone still calm, but carrying a strong feeling of curiosity. Chapter 24-22, Great Attack of the Celestial King. The others only knew that Ling Han was overwhelmingly strong, and could match a celestial king, yet the Blue North King knew that while Ling Han was indeed strong, there was still a very large gap between his battle prowess and his own. Ling Han's battle prowess had just barely touched the line of the First Heaven Celestial King, while the Blue North King had cultivated for a great many years on First Heaven. By now, he was already in late stage First Heaven, so his battle prowess naturally far exceeded the former. Ling Han also had his own judgment. The Blue North King's vitality index was around 5,400 points, considerably higher than his, but with his tough physique, he was completely capable of clashing with him. I just had a stroke of unusual luck, Ling Han stated evenly. The Blue North King was naturally not going to believe him. What kind of unusual luck could allow an ascending origin tier to possess strength that matched a celestial king? Realization dawned on him. You must be one of the rumored monarch stars, and consumed crimson demonic earth. That is why you have this kind of battle prowess. The vitality index of a monarch star was around 4,500, and after consuming crimson demonic earth, this could soar directly to 4,700. If he continued to consume it further, uncaring of the after effects, the vitality index could be boosted to a further level, reaching around 4,800 points. Even though this had not reached Celestial King tier level, there wouldn't be as large a gap anymore, after all. This was the possibility that was closest to the truth that the Blue North King could think of. He was only a First Heaven Celestial King, after all. He was not qualified at all to get in contact with that unique power of the heaven and earth yet, even if there was a considerable amount of crimson demonic earth here. Consuming crimson demonic earth would have completely no effect on a celestial king, and this was set by the heaven and earth. Ling Han shrugged. Whatever you think. He paused. If you want to fight, I can oblige. If not, then don't keep me from my affairs either. These words were extremely impolite. He was practically saying, if we're not going to fight, then just get lost. The Blue North King's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Since he had become a celestial king, second heaven or even third heaven celestial kings had not spoken to him in such a tone. His killing intent rose as he glared fixedly at Ling Han. His index finger moved slightly. The thought of killing this young prodigy rose up in his mind, and could not be dismissed. Youth, you are too arrogant, he declared menacingly. Ling Han laughed, and rolled the muscles of his neck, shrugging. If you want to fight, let's get on with it. Don't blabber nonsense. His body art was extremely terrifying. With his movement, it was like a great beast of the primitive age had revived. The air reverberated, waves of power surging in all directions. Pang, pang, pang. Wherever the power waves surged past, everyone stumbled as if they were drunk, and quite a number had already flopped onto the ground. It should be known that all those that could make their way here had to be at the ascending origin tier. Only now did everyone have a deeper understanding. Ling Han, indeed, had strength that could match a celestial king. This was too inconceivable. He had just started on the celestial path, and already possessed celestial king tier power. Then what about once he formed a celestial seed, and truly set foot in the celestial king tier? Just how powerful would he be then? Just thinking about this possibility caused everyone's breathing to become heavy. This man had started an era, and set a record that might be one that no one would ever be able to break. The Blue North King humphed, his hands forming claws, and flickering with a golden sheen. He had succeeded Tao through cultivating the regulations of metal, and was also connected with the regulations of metal. It meant that he was a part of the regulations of metal. When he moved, endless regulations of metal rushed towards and entwined around him, turning into 99 golden dragons, impressively powerful and exhibiting fully the bearing of a celestial king. All celestial kings could use regulations per se, but the higher their cultivation level, the more regulations they could draw on, and, naturally, the greater their battle prowess would be. And regulations were the manifestation of the power of heaven and earth, a kind of law that represented the will of the heaven and earth. The rage of a celestial king would be equivalent to the raging of the heaven and earth, which was unbelievably frightening. Everyone was sprawled out on the ground, but as long as they had formed a sliver of celestial seed, they would be able to hold up against this kind of pressure. Ling Han was intrigued. Though he had slaughtered celestial kings before, that was all through lending the power of an external force. It was either the power of heaven and earth of the neutral zone or the unleashed might of the Black Tower. This time, would he be able to slaughter a celestial king with his own power? The Blue North King moved, striking out with a claw. It enlarged endlessly, and it was as if this golden light was the only thing that remained in the realm. Ling Han released a battle cry, and used fists of fury once more. Incredibly aggressive, he clashed head-on with the Blue North King, not backing down in the slightest. The two of them fought fiercely, from the ground all the way to the air. The people below them could only see endless lights exploding and flashing, as well as loud noises endlessly blasting like thunder. Some people wanted to soar into the air, and watch from close quarters, but discovered that they could not rise into the air at all, because the paramount pressure belonging to Ling Han and the Blue North King filled their surroundings. If they rose into the air, they would sustain severe injury, and if they rose further, that would be opposing a celestial king, and that naturally would result in their complete destruction. In the skies, Ling Han used all the power at his disposal, fighting to his heart's content. Celestial kings were superior in terms of regulations. Hence, the Blue North King could extract a great amount of regulations of metal, and fill the area completely. Ling Han could not draw on any kind of regulations at all, and though he had a celestial physique, and could use the flow of time, he, too, could completely exhaust his stores without the replenishment from the power of heaven and earth. Thus, in terms of regulations, Ling Han was being completely suppressed, but this was all right. In the first place, he did not fight by depending on the power of regulation. On the contrary, without the disturbance of regulations, he could focus his full attention on body art. Every punch and kick was the show of might of his physical power, allowing him to better use this kind of power. The longer he fought, the stronger he became. At times, he would use his own injuries to exchange for injuring his opponent. His style of fighting was completely unreasonable. It could not be helped. His physique was too tough. At the ordinary level of defense, it would equivalent to the lowest tier of the Celestial King tier, and once he actively channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll, his defense could be further boosted madly, being completely capable of bearing up against the barrage of attacks from a Celestial King. Even the Blue North King was feeling a headache. He had never seen an opponent like this. The latter clearly had Celestial King tier battle prowess, yet used his own injuries to exchange for injuring his opponent, and fought in such a self-destructive manner. And what made him feel even more helpless was how Ling Han's defense was extremely tough, completely capable of bearing his attacks head-on, so whenever he moved, he would be wary, and dared not advance too deeply. What if Ling Han managed to take the chance to just mess around? Then, there really was a possibility that he would be injured. For a celestial king to be wounded by an ascending origin tier, just what kind of extreme humiliation was that? And once he was wary when he attacked, it was even harder for the Blue North King to suppress Ling Han. He could not resolve the situation even after a long time, and the battle was still in a deadlock. At the beginning, the Blue North King had still been thinking that Ling Han had consumed the crimson demonic earth, and there was no way he could maintain this state constantly. But after 2 hours of fighting, Ling Han was still energized and lively, and that was when he realized that something was off. He was a little annoyed. After fighting for so long, he actually still hadn't managed to suppress Ling Han. This was really embarrassing for him. Just how could this brat be so strong? The Blue North King's heart was filled with curiosity. By now, he could be certain that Ling Han had not consumed the crimson demonic earth, but was rather using a different method to make his battle prowess leap. This caused his heart to throb wildly as a strong covetous desire rose up in him. He would definitely get hold of this secret technique, and it would definitely increase his strength countless times over. It was not impossible for him to suppress a second heaven celestial king, or match a third heaven celestial king. Humph. Blue North King's figure paused slightly. A celestial tree manifested behind him. He muttered a chant, and a golden moon rose up from the top of the tree, emanating thousands of golden lights and shadows. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that his body seemed to have frozen, and he could not move the slightest muscle. Blue North King had released a powerful move. Chapter 24-23, Show of Might of the Divine Demon Sword. Ling Han concentrated and looked. The golden moonlight was completely filled with particles, and they were all golden in color. It was these golden particles that caused the moonlight to turn golden. He had a dawning realization. It should be these golden particles as well that rendered him incapable of movement. The Blue North King cultivated the regulations of metal, and had presently turned this entire area into a metal-aligned one. Being within this area, Ling Han naturally could not move. This was a great move, and had to be powerful. The Blue North King naturally would not waste this kind of opportunity. He pounced, and tapped out with a finger. A golden light shot out, turning into a sharp sword that stabbed out towards Ling Han's forehead, intending to pierce through his mind itself. Ling Han was unafraid, a smile appearing at the corners of his lips. The indestructible heaven scroll activated, and seals suddenly appeared on his body one after another, exuding a supreme aura that surpassed regulations. Pung! The sharp sword formed by the golden light stabbed Ling Han's forehead, creating an endless brilliance and forcing Ling Han to retreat continuously, yet it could not wound him in the slightest. Even a celestial king could not possibly maintain the channeling of such a great move continuously. The golden moonlight that filled the skies very soon disappeared, and Ling Han immediately recovered his mobility. Immediately, he repaid the Blue North King with a punch of his own. Wang! Immediately, a golden shield formed in front of the Blue North King, blocking this strike from Ling Han. However, a deep fist imprint was left behind on the shield. The shield trembled, and turned into golden sand before disappearing. The Blue North King's hair fluttered, and turned into thousands of sharp arrows that shot forwards. Ling Han could not possibly channel the indestructible heaven scroll continuously either. Instantly, he was pierced by the arrows, his physique tearing apart, and celestial blood gushed out. Thankfully, the arrows did not penetrate too deeply, and could not cause too much damage to him. It could not be helped. In terms of battle prowess, it was indeed the Blue North King that was superior. But whether it was Blue North King or the spectators below, they could only watch in shock. A celestial king had already released a great move, and it had actually only managed to wound Ling Han slightly. Who would not be completely speechless and feeling helpless at this? Ling Han broke into a grin. Since you have used a great move, I'll show you one of mine. His right hand shook, and the divine demon sword was already summoned. Since the Black Tower could no longer be used, he had stowed the divine demon sword to be nurtured within his own body. Though he presently already possessed a heavenly venerate tool, that was still someone else's, after all. Ling Han planned to forge a precious tool of his own. Hence, the divine demon sword had naturally become his first choice. Furthermore, only the divine demon sword could break through the level of celestial tool, and be used by a heavenly venerate. He was sure that the divine demon sword would become even sharper after bathing in celestial king blood. Divine metal? The Blue North King's eyes widened slightly, revealing a hint of seriousness. But at the same time, there was also delight and a hint of jealousy. Because even he did not possess a celestial tool, yet a mere ascending origin tier actually had it, which made him, a great celestial king, feel emotionally unbalanced. But that was fine. As long as he killed Ling Han, and plucked his soul, he would be able to obtain the secret of how the latter could be so unusually strong, and the celestial tool would naturally fall into his hands as well. I will take you down. The Blue North King moved, and a golden palm descended like a great mountain. Ling Han did not answer. His sword swept out, the sword chi shattering the heavens. His own battle prowess could not pose too much of a threat to the Blue North King, but it was a completely different story if he had a celestial tool in hand. This is just like how a 7-year-old kid would only be thrashed if he were to get into a fight with an adult. Even if the former managed to strike his opponent, it would not hurt much, either. But what if this kid grasped a sharp sword in his hand then? Then even an adult would have to be wary and careful. Once he was touched by the sharp sword, his skin would definitely be broken, and he would bleed. If his vital points were hit, it was not impossible for him to even die. The Blue North King was indeed extremely wary, and could only wrap regulations around his hand to resist the sword chi. But to actually clash head-on with a celestial tool with bare hands? That was a completely impossible feat, and even a celestial king would be dismembered. With sword in hand, Ling Han had actually turned the situation completely on its head. Even in a clash with a celestial king, he was not at a disadvantage either. In fact, it seemed like he would be turning around to suppress the latter instead. Everyone was once again stunned and dazed. Being capable of barely matching a celestial king was already a very inconceivable feat, what more when he looked like he would be turning around to beat down on the celestial king instead. Wasn't this just going to make their eyes pop out in shock? Ling Han released a battle cry, his right hand wielding the sword and using the heaven-destroying 9 swords, while his left hand curled into a fist, and was still using fists of fury. The greatest eternity everlasting physique was channeled. He exerted time acceleration effects on himself, and his speed began to burst madly. Even an ascending origin tier could not possibly catch a trace of him. This caused those ascending origin tiers to cower. If Ling Han wanted to kill them, he would only need to use extreme speed, and a casual sword strike would be enough to behead them. After all, even a celestial king did not dare to face this head-on, so wouldn't an ascending origin tier die with just a single strike? The red-clothed woman and the others were all trembling. It was they that had begged and pleaded, so the Blue North King had agreed to help them. But if the Blue North King was defeated or even severely wounded because of this, they would definitely have to bear the endless fury of the Blue North King in the future. How could Ling Han be this strong? How could he be this powerful? Was there any justice left in this world? The more Ling Han fought, the more proficient he became. A thought suddenly occurred to him. He took out a bit of crimson demonic earth with his left hand, and rubbed it on the divine demon sword. Since a weapon that was infused with crimson demonic earth could show even greater might, then would it have any effect on the divine demon sword? Unfortunately, the divine demon sword was still the same, and did not surge with greater power. The Blue North King did get a scare, however. He had thought Ling Han was going to unleash some great move, yet it was just a false alarm. He couldn't help but become angry and embarrassed. Someone as strong as a celestial king had actually gotten a scare from an ascending origin tier. How could he bear that? He declared coldly, "Crimson demonic earth has no effect on celestial king tier power. You are thinking too much." Ling Han gave an "oh." So that was the case. No wonder he did not see the Blue North King using any crimson demonic earth. It was not because the latter cared for his own reputation, but that it would have no effect at all. Then let's try another method. Ling Han stretched out a hand and took something out again. His left hand now held that dimension scroll. Then, he extracted the energy within and poured it into the divine demon sword. Instantly, a clap of thunder suddenly sounded. Dark clouds spread out densely, with terrifying lightning flashing in their depths. It was like the heavens were raging. The moment this heavenly tribulation took form, it would be a heavenly venerate tribulation. To say nothing of how the others were panicking and anxious to the extreme, even the Blue North King was extremely astonished. The extent of terror of this heavenly tribulation had already far surpassed his level, and he would not even dare to imagine it. Was it an 8th heaven tribulation? Or a 9th heaven tribulation? This was caused by Ling Han. As a mere ascending origin tier, how could he possibly summon a heavenly tribulation as he pleased? And such a frightening great heavenly tribulation at that? Thankfully, Ling Han did not dare act rashly either. If the heavenly venerate tribulation was really allowed to take form, he himself would be the first to be implicated. He hurriedly stopped extracting the energy, and the heavenly tribulation in the skies also stopped storing up power, but the dark clouds were not dispersing at all. At any moment, it was possible that a bolt of lightning would strike. Z. The divine demon sword was flickering with terrifying brilliance, exuding paramount pressure. Even the blade itself was trembling, as if it was about to shatter. Void particle energy, one of the 6 great source powers of the Genesis world, heavenly venerable tier, and the divine demon sword was presently only a celestial tool. Sustaining this kind of terrifying power, it naturally was slightly unable to bear up. Ling Han laughed, brandishing the divine demon sword, and charged out again. Shio, a brilliant light was slashed out. This was not just the divine demon sword's own sharp sword chi, but also carried a sliver of void particle energy. How terrifying! There were 9 heavens in the Celestial King tier, and every single step forwards was as difficult as ascending the heavens. The gap among even 9th heaven Celestial Kings was extremely great, what more when void particle energy was at the heavenly venerable tier? Chapter 24-24, The Celestial King retreats in defeat. No matter how strong the Blue North King was, he was still just a first heaven Celestial King, and was worlds apart from heavenly venerable tier. How could he possibly match such ferocious might? His right arm suddenly stretched out, and a shield immediately formed in front of him. Pang! The sword chi sliced the shield, and with a loud, crisp noise, the shield was immediately shattered. The sword chi continued on its original course, practically undeterred. The Blue North King was stunned. He had not thought that mere sword chi would have such frightening destructive power. The defense that he had laid down might as well have been completely useless. He hurriedly turned his head to the side, and dodged the sword chi. Shwa, the sword chi swept past, and a few strands of hair quietly drifted downwards. Ling Han had actually managed to slice a few hairs from the Blue North King's head. When the spectators below saw this, they felt a chill rise up from their limbs as numbness spread all over their scalps. Heavens, that was a Celestial King, yet Ling Han actually managed to cut off a few strands of his hair. Though it was just a few strands, a Celestial King had a lofty, noble standing, and was an invincible god of war in everyone's eyes, yet a few strands of his hair had actually been cut with a single sword strike. How could they believe this? This was heaven-defying, this was really heaven-defying. The Blue North King's expression was ice-cold. Not the slightest bit of anger could be seen from his expression, only extreme calmness remained in his expression. What person that could become a Celestial King did not have a willpower of iron? This power is very astounding, he said sincerely. Being capable of cutting a few strands of hair from his head was really hard to imagine. He was a Celestial King, and had the grace to admit this fact. Ling Han laughed, and waved his sword. You're not going to tell me now that you won't fight, right? I have never backed down from a battle, the Blue North King declared proudly. In a battle of equals, he had never feared anyone. Then come battle. Ling Han charged out. The divine demon sword had been instilled with void particle energy, and would be able to burst out with frightening might for a short time, so he was confident that he would be able to defeat even a celestial king. The Blue North King had witnessed the might of the divine demon sword previously, and did not dare to face it head-on at all. After he retreated, he delivered a series of palm strikes, sending out palm strikes that were as massive as mountains as they descended on Ling Han. Ling Han casually blasted out sword chi. Peng, 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 when every flash of sword chi sliced into a massive palm, the palm would immediately crumble. It could not withstand even a single blow. He advanced deeply, and set off in hot pursuit of the Blue North King. The people below were all practically passing out from watching this. Just who exactly was the Celestial King here? How was it that it was an ascending origin tier was attacking a Celestial King? Their view on life was about to collapse. Actually, Ling Han had stronger trump cards which he had not played yet, and that was the Heaven and Earth origin stars. It could kill even low-tier Celestial Kings. But since he had the upper hand now, he naturally would not be willing to waste such a deadly weapon. After all, he did not have many Heaven and Earth origin stars on him either. The Blue North King roared out continuously, launching ultimate moves repeatedly, but in front of the divine demon sword, any technique was only wasted effort. On the other hand, it was now Ling Han that could pose a serious threat to him, yet he could do nothing to Ling Han. With his battle prowess, if he wanted to cause serious injury to Ling Han, he would have to attack him a few hundred times in succession at least, but how could this be possibly done? After fighting another 3 days, the Blue North King finally revealed fear. Ling Han's stamina was unending, and though the power of the divine demon sword was close to exhaustion, it could gain endless replenishment, and he could not find a hole to penetrate through it all. Furthermore, under Ling Han's continuous attacks, he had also been struck quite a number of times by the sword chi, so he was now covered with wounds, Celestial King blood spurting everywhere. Don't let it go to waste. Ling Han moved, and gathered the blood that spilled from the Blue North King. Though this was not Celestial King blood essence, it was still extremely valuable, and was not too inferior as compared to a Celestial King tier great herb. The Blue North King's face was livid with fury. You gather my blood right in front of me. Is there anyone else like you? Those watching below were also speechless. What kind of person was this? To do something so despicable, was he planning to become deadly enemies with the Blue North King? Good. 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 The Blue North King's whole body was trembling. He bounced back in retreat, and endless golden light surged out, forming golden mountains in front of him which blocked the sword chi one after another. He gritted his teeth, then actually turned, and left. He had abandoned even his pride as a Celestial King. He understood that if things went on in this manner, he would still be unable to kill Ling Han. Instead, it would place himself in a dangerous position. Then, he might as well cease the battle. Of course, he was definitely not going to let this go. Shio, he left in a flurry of divine light that filled the skies, and was instantly gone from sight. This. Everyone could not speak. A Celestial King had actually been forced to flee. He had fled. Who would have believed this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, it felt like they were dreaming. If they heard others speak of this, they would definitely think that this was an extremely ridiculous joke. Ling Han withdrew his sword and stood, making no attempt to pursue. Firstly, his goal was the celestial fruits, and secondly, he would not be able to catch up. His battle prowess was actually slightly weaker than that of the Celestial King tier, but the divine demon sword was really too powerful now, and that was why he had attained such glorious accomplishments. Otherwise, it should be him that could not do anything against the Blue North King, though the Blue North King would not be able to kill him either. Husband. Ling Han. Hunyao and the other women all pounced. Though Ling Han had even killed Celestial Kings previously, for their own safety, they had long since entered into the Black Tower, and had not witnessed it themselves. Furthermore, it was a display of Ling Han's true strength this time, which was even rarer and more valuable, and they were extremely excited at this. Ling Han smiled slightly. All right, let's harvest the fruits. The 3 women all nodded. This was a familiar path for the 4 of them. Very quickly, they charged to the mountaintop, then climbed the cliff, and arrived at the side of the celestial tree. Ling Han stretched out his hand first, and at the same time prepared himself to intercept. If this celestial tree was going to flee, he would move decisively, and snatch the celestial fruits. The celestial tree shook gently, and endless celestial chi rose up in an extremely beautiful display. A celestial fruit automatically left the tree, and fell into Ling Han's hand. When the celestial fruit fell into the hands of a living being, he would have to consume it as soon as possible, or it had to be concocted into a celestial king pill. Otherwise, it would soon evaporate into the heaven and earth. Ling Han immediately consumed the fruit. He might not need the celestial seed to sprout and grow, but he could study the celestial seed in his mind, and grasp the Tao of celestial king tier in advance. In fact, he was going to gather the essence of a great many celestial seeds, and form the most perfect celestial seed. An invincible seed. He stepped out of the way, and the Empress took his place. The Empress stretched out her hand, her expression clearly bearing the domineering air that said, "If you dare not give one to me, I'll beat you till you burst." The celestial tree shuddered slightly, and another fruit fell. The Empress grabbed it, consuming it directly. Hunyo took her place. She giggled. "Stupid tree, if your fruits taste bad, Nyo will burn you." The celestial tree shook again, as if it was expressing its displeasure. However, another fruit still fell. Hunyo got hold of it, and consumed it in a few chews. This taste was quite good, and the little girl's eyes immediately lit up. She stretched out her hand and demanded another. Nyo still wants more. Those beneath them were all watching with both envy and speechlessness. There was no benefit to be gained even with more celestial seeds. Have you gotten addicted to the taste? The celestial tree was not willing to give a second fruit, so Hunyo could only retreat gloomily. Bewitching Maiden Ro took her place. However, when the bewitching Maiden Ro stepped forwards, the celestial tree shook, and a fruit only dropped down after a very long time, as if it was hesitating whether or not to give a fruit. This should be because the bewitching Maiden Ro's performance was slightly subpar, and had not completely won the approval of the celestial tree. However, for better or worse, she was not disappointed. At this time, Ling Han stretched out a hand again. Naturally, there was no reason that a celestial fruit should go to waste. Chapter 24-25, Ransacking the Place of a Celestial King. The celestial tree trembled lightly, and did not drop down another celestial fruit. It seemed to be saying that Ling Han had already obtained a celestial fruit, and no benefits would be gained from getting another. It was not willing to surrender another. Ling Han smiled, and said, "I will concoct it into a celestial king pill, and will definitely not waste it." When these words fell, the celestial tree shuddered again, and then did something that Ling Han had not foreseen. It uprooted itself, and then a few thick roots coiled together, as if they had formed into a few legs. Then, it ran off in a flash. This speed was astonishingly fast. In just a few steps, it had already fled into the distance. Though Ling Han had already prepared himself to intercept, the moment the celestial tree moved, he found out why even the Blue North King had not interfered. It could not be stopped, it was really too fast. The celestial tree did not have very great battle prowess, nor did it have strong defense, but this speed was definitely supreme to all celestial kings. Perhaps only a fifth heaven celestial king and above could successfully intercept it. On the celestial path, this naturally could not possibly happen. There weren't even any fourth heaven celestial kings here, what more fifth heaven celestial kings? Ling Han sighed, and could only settle for looking for the next celestial tree. Let's go. They descended from the cliff, and everyone was looking at Ling Han with extremely reverent gazes. This was a guy that could force even a celestial king into fleeing, and he himself hadn't even become a celestial king yet. The moment he set foot in this cultivation level, just how strong would his battle prowess be? The strongest celestial king in history? Ling Han swept a glance over them. Minor characters like the red-clothed woman and the others had long since fled. Clearly, they feared that Ling Han would be calling them to account. Even a celestial king had fled, so what were they worth? Let's go to Blue North City. Since they had already feuded with the Blue North King, there was naturally no need to be reserved any longer. Ling Han brought the 3 women with him to Blue North City, barged directly into the Celestial King Manor, and then ransacked the entire manor. However, the Blue North King had only ascended Dao for just several billion years, and had too many descendants. Hence, his wealth was not very great, so as Ling Han and the others ransacked his abode, they were mumbling complaints that this Celestial King was really too poor. If the Blue North King heard this, he would probably be coughing up blood. You guys have gone too far, haven't you? This Celestial King did not return to his manor, and it was unknown where he had gone. Ling Han did not care either. At worst, they could have another battle. Just how big was Blue North City? The news of the Celestial King Manor being ransacked immediately spread through the entire city, and everyone was gaping with shock. They had not imagined that outsiders would actually be so ferocious, to actually beat a Celestial King into fleeing. There were also many people who did not believe it, and ran to the Celestial King Manor. It was only when they discovered that all the guards had fled that they finally believed it. After their ransacking, Ling Han and his group continued on their journey. The celestial path would only open once every 10 billion years. This was a set arrangement of the heaven and earth. Then, it was extremely possible that there were many celestial trees here that would be blooming flowers and bearing fruits which would ripen at the same time. Thus, Ling Han decided to set out quickly. Otherwise, those like Ji Wuming were completely qualified to obtain the celestial seed with the help of Crimson Demonic Earth. If he did not rush, it was probable that he would end up with nothing. They set out on their way. While Ling Han and his group nurtured the celestial seed, they felt the change from the ascending origin tier to celestial king tier. After consuming the celestial fruit, there was only a single imprint, and this was the true celestial seed. If one used his own will to nurture it, communicating with great Tao, it would sprout and ultimately grow into a celestial tree. Ling Han and the others all had more ambitious pursuits, and had no plans of having this imprint turn into a celestial seed. They merely placed it in their minds, and carefully observed it. Because they had ransacked the residence of the Blue North King, they were now falling behind other outsiders. Over a dozen days later, they arrived at the next city, and there was similarly a celestial king overseeing the city. Ling Han made his inquiries first, and discovered that there was no celestial tree here. Hence, they did not stop over, and merely continued their journey. They simply hired a carriage, and took their journey slowly and easily. In any case, they had a ride, and they themselves could comprehend inside the carriage. A naturally complete celestial seed contained too many secrets. Though it was only a mark, it could manifest into countless possibilities. If we can fully comprehend the secrets of this celestial seed, we may be able to comprehend the secrets of the celestial king tier in advance, and would be able to use celestial king tier power to a certain extent, Ling Han said. The 3 women all nodded. This mark was naturally born from the heaven and earth, and contained the secrets of becoming a celestial king. Only if they truly comprehended the secrets within would they possibly be able to turn the mark into a celestial seed, in which it would grow and mature. And the key of all this was actually at the first step, comprehending the secret of the celestial king tier, and then using the celestial seed to communicate with the heaven and earth and extract the essence of regulations. They all cultivated carefully. Without a celestial seed, the celestial king tier seemed unrealistic, and could not be touched at all. But now that they had a celestial seed, they could finally touch the threshold of the celestial king tier. Though it was only the threshold, and there was still a long stretch for them to go. Day after day passed, and they felt that there was a certain level of increase to their strength. For Ling Han, this kind of increase wasn't actually of much help to raising his full battle prowess, because without becoming a celestial king, his vitality index in terms of regulations could never break through to 5,000 points. It was still his body art that was stronger. The four of them had reached an agreement. There should still be a transition stage between the Celestial King tier and Ascending Origin tier, and this could be termed Pseudo-Celestial King tier. The strength of a Pseudo-Celestial King was extremely close to Celestial King tier, but could not truly touch that threshold, because once Vitality Index reached 5,000 points, that would be the Celestial King tier. A few months later, they arrived in a new city. A piece of explosive news was heard here. A complete celestial seed had appeared. It was in the depths of an abandoned garden. From afar, a celestial herb could be glimpsed, and it bore a single celestial fruit. Its fragrance could be smelled from a range of 50 kilometers, and a great many people were cultivating outside the garden, absorbing the celestial seed shards within the fruity fragrance, and ultimately pieced out a single celestial seed. According to legends, the closer one got to the heart of the celestial path, the closer to flawlessness and perfection the celestial seed that appeared would be. Ling Han and his group immediately set out, journeying towards that garden. However, after traveling 3 days, the path ahead of them was cut off. The mountain path was steep and rocky, and there was a mysterious power flowing around, which stopped the progress of carriages. Hence, Ling Han told the coachman to wait there, while he and the 3 women continued onwards. Little Terror was looking listless. Ever since coming to the celestial path, its condition had not been very good. It was possible that this place was too close to the core of the celestial realm, and it, as a battle beast of the foreign realm, was feeling even greater repression. The 4 of them walked for over half a day's time, and arrived at the waist of the mountain. The way ahead of them suddenly opened up to a wide panorama, revealing a stretch of ruins that occupied an astonishing surface area. This should have been a beautiful sacred palace before, but most of the structures were already destroyed now, leaving behind remains of walls that were only half the height of an adult and stone pillars that had fallen onto the ground. However, it could still be seen how majestic and austere it had once been. Through these broken remains of the walls, it could be seen that there was a garden in the deepest corners of the palace courtyard. That place was already barren, but there was still a plant that was completely green like jade growing there. Its leaves looked like swords, with a dense purple mist spreading from it. From the first look, they knew that it was extraordinary. And at the very top of this plant, there was a crimson fruit. This was even more extraordinary, as it was actually entwined in lightning, and this kind of lightning caused a powerful fright to rise up in their hearts even when they were looking at it from such a far distance. It was like they were faced with a heavenly tribulation. Lightning-aligned celestial seed. Ling Han and the others all concluded. Celestial seeds also had varying elemental alignments. For example, the celestial seed they had previously obtained was wood-aligned, and it should be that a single celestial tree or celestial herb could only bear celestial seeds of the same elemental alignment. Chapter 24-26, Scene of Ruins. When Ling Han looked around, there really were masses of people here. There were many heads of black hair as far as the eye could see. Of course, there were also oddities, people who had red, green, golden, or even other more outrageous colors of hair. These were mostly wild beasts taken human form. Though they now had human form, they were still different in the end. At present, everyone was extremely silent, and were seated around that ruined garden, as if there was a celestial king there that was presently passing on his teachings, and teaching them supreme knowledge. No one attempted to barge into the garden and pluck the celestial fruit. They seemed unusually well behaved. Ling Han glanced at the 3 women and nodded. "Let's go." The 4 of them strode forwards. They already possessed the mark of a celestial seed, and as they comprehended, their strength had increased, and was heading towards the level of Pseudo-Celestial King tier. Now, they really feared no one. They were just about to pass the others when someone in front of them immediately shouted, "Don't you know the rules?" Ling Han smiled. "There are rules?" "Of course," that person declared proudly. "Without enough strength, you would not be qualified to even enter here. Do you see that side? Just stay there." He pointed at a corner. Ling Han looked over. That was already outside of the garden, and there were a great many people seated there too. However, there was clearly still a lot of empty space in the garden, yet they did not take another step further. Clearly, those were all weaker people, and that was why they could only stay outside. The fruity fragrance they could absorb there would naturally be considerably weaker. Ling Han turned back around, and smilingly said, "I am very strong." "Pooh." That person scoffed. He had never seen such a shameless person that would actually praise himself. "Greetings, Grandmaster Ling." Their conversation had alerted those in the area, and when an outsider spotted Ling Han, he hurriedly stood up, and bowed towards him respectfully. The reverence and fanaticism in his expression was practically about to spill over. Ling Han nodded very casually. "What is your name?" "I am Fu Dong," the person quickly replied in excitement. Though he was only an ascending origin tier, and could also advance into Celestial King tier himself, in front of Ling Han, he was willing to play the role of a lackey. It could not be helped. Not only was Ling Han a 5-star grandmaster, his own battle prowess was even more terrifying. In the future, he would definitely become the strongest Celestial King, or at least one of the strongest. Ling Han gave an "oh," and stated smilingly, "Brother Fu." Fu Dong was even more excited. Who said that Ling Han was not an easy person to deal with? He's very polite. As for those that spread the gossip, they were just jealous. When the person from earlier saw this, his expression involuntarily changed to shock. He was a local resident of the Celestial Path, and naturally would not recognize or know of Ling Han, yet he knew Fu Dong because the latter had fought his way in with true strength, and had proven that he had the right to stay here and cultivate. But this kind of elite was actually so humble and modest in front of Ling Han, looking completely like he was willing to become a subordinate to him. This was enough proof of just how powerful Ling Han's strength was. He couldn't help but feel a sense of lingering fear. If he and Ling Han really came to blows, he would definitely be seeking his own humiliation. He hurriedly lowered his head, and became a coward. "Hey, why are you sticking your head in the ground?" Hu Niu asked delicately. He actually dared to look down on Niu's Ling Han. Niu expresses that Niu is very angry, and is going to hit him when he is down. That person did not even dare to say a single word, and only pretended like he had not heard anything. Though this was very embarrassing, it was still much better than being pummeled in public. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not take it to heart. He just looked at that jade-green celestial tree and the majestic mist of purple that was rising from it, which made it look extremely noble. He asked Fu Dong about the origins of this celestial tree, but the latter was not sure either. He had just arrived a month earlier himself, and only knew that the depths of this garden were extremely dangerous. Not one person had managed to barge their way in. "Do you see those damaged weapons there?" Fu Dong pointed at a few weapons that were scattered all around the celestial tree. They were a sword, a saber, a spear, and a halberd, and they were stabbed into the ground. However, every single weapon was already damaged, and their previous glory was concealed. As long as one gets too near, these weapons would show their might, which is very frightening. Fu Dong felt a sense of lingering fear, his face pale. "I have seen it with my own eyes." One person was very confident in his own strength, and wanted to forcefully barge in. As a result, that damaged saber automatically slashed out, its divine light dazzling over 5,000 kilometers, and directly cut that person so badly that both his form and spirit were destroyed. Ling Han nodded. Without protection that was strong enough, this celestial tree would not last until his arrival. "I'll try it out," Ling Han said to the 3 women. The 3 women all nodded. They knew that Ling Han's present strength was practically at the Celestial King tier, and added with the might of the divine demon sword, even a first heaven celestial king had been chased off. This naturally qualified him to venture in. Fu Dong's expression was also feverish. He, too, was filled with confidence in Ling Han. He was one of the witnesses of the battle between Ling Han and the Blue North King. Though he had not seen much of it, with his strength, he had witnessed with his own eyes how the Blue North King had fled. Was that still not enough? The guy that had previously been scared out of his wits revealed a cold smirk. He wants to barge in and pluck the fruit? You are just seeking death. Pung. He felt a sudden pain in his head, and was already sprawled down onto the ground. He flew into a rage, and hurriedly got back to his feet again. He turned and saw Hu Niu was clenching her little fist, glaring angrily at him. He was just about to flip out when a sudden chill rose up in his heart. Though he had been caught unawares, just how strong did she have to be able to strike him down with a single punch? With this in mind, his fury immediately subsided like floodwaters. He once again dipped his head, and returned to being a coward. Ling Han was completely unconcerned about this kind of trifling matter. He merely stared ahead before striding forwards. His main goal was naturally to retrieve the celestial fruit, but the 4 broken weapons were also within his range of retrieval. Being capable of easily killing an ascending origin tier, these 4 weapons were probably forged from divine metal. Though they were now damaged, they still had powerful might. He was not interested in celestial tools, but divine metal could be swallowed by the divine demon sword, and it could continue its evolution. Another here to commit suicide? Hee, foolish outsider. He probably thinks that his strength is very great, yet has forgotten that this is the celestial path. As he passed, quite a number of people were sneering, but because they discovered that Ling Han was heading towards the celestial tree, they made no move to stop him. In any case, he would soon be killed, so why should they waste the effort? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and a terrifying pressure spread out, instantly silencing all of them. These locals all exchanged looks, and they could see the shock and even fear in each other's expressions. How could there possibly be such a strong person in this world? They felt as if they had been glared at by a celestial king, and were almost scared out of their wits. Ling Han withdrew his gaze, and continued onwards. Wang, he had just placed a foot within the 30-meter range of the celestial tree, and a dazzling light immediately rose up from the ground. Multiple veined patterns appeared on the ground, and when they joined together, they formed an extremely complex seal. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that the environment around him had immediately changed. The ruined pillars were now complete and extremely tall, the broken walls were mended, and looked like white jade. Beautiful and ornate designs covered them, emanating a divine air. Luxuriant flowers spread out like silk, leaves as green as jade. This looked like a paradise on earth. Ling Han knew that this was an image of this place from when it had been in its age of prosperity. Unfortunately, something had happened, and this place had become a place of ruins. He exerted the power of time, and attempted to trace history. The scene changed, and the scene from eons ago truly appeared. Chapter 24-27, Fighting a Celestial Tool. Ling Han saw the scene of this palace at its age of greatest prosperity. There were beautiful palace maids walking in and out, soldiers bursting with exuberant youth patrolling back and forth, and finally, he saw a female celestial king, graceful, elegant, and enchanting. When he focused his eyes on her, this female celestial king actually looked back at him, a confused expression appearing on her face. What great strength! Ling Han was looking at her through time, and it actually managed to draw her notice. Crack! At this moment, a bolt of lightning descended, striking precisely on Ling Han's head. Instantly, everything was cut off. The jade walls, high pillars, and beautiful maids all vanished. That female celestial king was also gone from sight, and everything around returned to what Ling Han had originally seen: damaged, ruined, and miserable. Ling Han was stunned. Though that had not been a heavenly tribulation, it was also the heaven and earth interfering to cause a disturbance. He had glimpsed a powerful female celestial king through the ages, and had drawn the latter's notice. If this continued too long, it could possibly change history. Because that female celestial king was a ninth heaven celestial king. This kind of powerful being only needed a thought, and could make another choice on some important matter, which would very possibly affect history, change history, or even overturn history. The past could only be the past, and could not be changed. The consequences involved would be too wide-ranging. Hence, the heaven and earth interfered, forcefully interrupting the possible contact that he could have had with that female celestial king. Ling Han was now even more curious. Just what great matter was this female celestial king hesitating over at that time? One choice could take her left, and the other would take her right, and it was actually capable of influencing history? Never mind. He shook his head, and continued onwards. Wang, ahead of him, that damaged sword revived. It was entirely entwined by lightning that crackled and popped. Then, it suddenly removed itself from the ground, and floated in midair. The damaged sword did not immediately attack, and only slanted and turned, the tip of the sword pointing straight at Ling Han. It seemed like it was issuing a warning, "Don't come any closer, or I won't be reserved." Ling Han did not move either, and only felt the aura emanated by this damaged sword. It was very strong. It definitely had the might of the first heaven celestial king tier, but Ling Han had a feeling that this was not the full might of the damaged sword. Once it was fully unleashed, that definitely was not just first heaven. It might be able to insta-kill even a third heaven celestial king. This was very normal. At that time, the female celestial king had been a ninth heaven celestial king. If these 4 celestial tools had all been her precious tools, their might naturally would not be limited to just the first heaven. Reaching 8th heaven or 9th heaven would be within reason as well. Ling Han shook his head internally. He had initially wanted to seize these 4 damaged weapons, and use them to strengthen the divine demon sword, but from the look of things now, it would already be quite impressive if he managed to cross despite their resistance. No wonder even the celestial king here had not retrieved these 4 celestial tools. If it was a celestial seed, that would be one thing. In any case, a celestial king would not be able to use it either, but these were celestial tools. Even if one did not like this kind of shape, he could melt them down and reforge them again, forging them into a shape that he would like. It was not that he did not want to, it was that he could not do so. All around, everyone was no longer cultivating. Instead, their eyes were focused on Ling Han. The locals and outsiders had 2 completely different states of emotion. In the eyes of the locals, Ling Han was seeking his own death because even if it was a celestial king that had come to retrieve the damaged celestial tools, he could still put up a fight at the beginning, but as the battle continued, the celestial tools would suddenly unleash their might and cause severe injury to that celestial king. And this celestial king who tried was a third heaven celestial king at that. From then onwards, this place had become a forbidden land for celestial kings. If ascending origin tiers wanted to pluck the celestial fruits, they would definitely be killed by the celestial tools. Meanwhile, the outsiders were filled with confidence in Ling Han. This guy was someone that had even managed to chase a celestial king away. Suppressing a few damaged celestial tools should be no issue for him. And amidst these differing emotions of the spectators, Ling Han took his first step. Instantly, the divine sword unleashed its might. It was like a king that had been challenged, and suddenly sent out a strike. With a sweep of the blade, all heavens could be destroyed. Ling Han covered his whole body with power, and brandished his fists in a counterattack with a roar. Pang, when his fists landed on the sword's blade, whang, a terrifying shock wave reverberated outwards. Pooh! All those who had been swept by the shock wave turned pale, hacking out mouthfuls of blood. Only Hu Niu and the Empress were exempted because they were already close to the height of Pseudo-Celestial King tier. They could just barely sustain the aftermath of a Celestial King tier battle. However, bewitching Maiden Ro was coughing up blood as well, though she had not spluttered it out. In this exchange, Ling Han slid backwards over 90 meters, creating deep grooves in the ground with his feet, and the damaged sword had also been struck backward several dozen meters, but even while it was still retreating, it made a comeback, and shot back to its original spot. It was still exuding a frightening aura directly aimed at Ling Han. Ling Han looked down, and there was a trace of blood on his hand. Though the wound was not deep, there was still blood seeping out. The sword, on the other hand, was damaged, but that had been the case to begin with, and aside from that, it was completely unscratched. This was the first time that Ling Han had been at a disadvantage in terms of physique, though his opponent was only a weapon. He immediately made his judgment inwardly. In terms of battle prowess, the damaged sword that had not unleashed its might further was inferior to him, but the celestial tool was practically indestructible. Even a ninth heaven celestial king would find it very, very hard to damage it. In other words, the damaged sword was already invincible by nature. Hence, the best result would be Ling Han forcing the damaged sword into retreat, plucking the celestial fruits, and then successfully retreating himself. It was impossible for him to suppress the celestial tool, because his strength was still inadequate. Even if he truly became a celestial king, the damaged sword could still unleash its might for the second time. That power would be even more frightening, and could wound even a third heaven celestial king. There was no solution to this. Unless Ling Han could be even stronger, and reach fourth heaven, fifth heaven, or an even higher cultivation level. The celestial tool would only be a celestial tool still. Furthermore, it was damaged, so its might would definitely be limited. Ling Han pulled himself together, and walked forwards again. The damaged sword struck once more. A majestic flash of light slashed towards him, shaking the world. Ling Han shook his right hand, and the divine demon sword was summoned. Even if his present physique was extremely tough, he was still unqualified to clash head-on with a celestial tool. Ding, ding, ding. The divine demon sword and the damaged sword clashed endlessly, bursting with a boundless, dazzling light. Ling Han was incredibly aggressive. His left hand continued to use the flow of time, and it would affect either the damaged sword or himself. He had a complete grasp of the initiative, and was beating down on the damaged sword. Everyone was staring dumbfoundedly, especially those locals. They had never seen such a powerful ascending origin tier before. All of them were gaping widely. It was like they had seen a ghost. Meanwhile, the outsiders appeared very proud. These locals actually dared to look down on them. Just see how powerful one of their prodigies could be. After striking at least 1,000 times, the glowing seals on the damaged sword suddenly dimmed. With a pu, it stabbed back into the ground, and made no further move to attack. At first, Ling Han thought that the damaged sword was going to enter into a second state, and explode with even greater might. He had already prepared himself to flee, but a good number of seconds had passed, and the damaged sword was still motionless. Right at this moment, the damaged saber beside it flowed, and was similarly entwined in lightning. This was a consecutive battle? Ling Han laughed. With the divine demon sword in hand, what did he have to fear? Let's battle it out. Xiao, the damaged saber also shot out of the ground, and recovered by itself. It unleashed a frightening fighting spirit, the power of a celestial king blazing as it launched an offensive at Ling Han. Ling Han moved, sword in hand and completely unafraid. After fighting for around 1,000 exchanges, the damaged saber retreated, and returned to the ground. The damaged spear took its place. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. This really was a consecutive battle. He released a battle cry, and took the initiative to charge out. No need for so much trouble. All four of you can come at me together. Chapter 24-28, Fate. Ling Han couldn't be bothered, and directly challenged all four damaged weapons. This naturally was not because he was too arrogant, but rather that he was confident. As long as these four damaged weapons did not unleash their strongest blows, he was completely capable of matching their combined forces. Wang, wang, wang. The other 3 weapons also revived respectively. The damaged sword, saber, and halberd all floated in the air, forming a line of attack with the damaged spear as they unleashed an offensive on Ling Han. The joined forces of these 4 weapons would definitely surpass a simple layering of their might. Just think of the past, when the 4 celestial tools were still in their prime. What celestial king was capable of matching them? How had this place been destroyed? Could it have been the move of a heavenly venerate? Logically, a 9th heaven celestial king could not possibly appear on the celestial path. Then could it be that this was originally a part of the celestial realm, and it was only later that it was split from the former, and swallowed by the celestial path? Or, the celestial path itself was within the celestial realm, and there had been no such thing as opening or closing before? These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. At present, he did not have the time to think too much, and could only release battle cries as he battled intensely with the 4 celestial tools. If the divine demon sword was taken into account as well, there were actually 5 celestial tools here, which was extremely shocking. Ling Han tried his best. He did not use the power of the dimension scroll, because he felt that his own power was enough to suppress these 4 celestial tools. Battle, battle, battle. He was fighting to his heart's content. The defense of his opponents far surpassed his, and would not be wounded by him at all, so he could attack without any reservations at all. This was a very good feeling. Ling Han was primarily using body arts to suppress them and various regulations as replenishment. The strength of his battle prowess was chilling. But after only 1,000 moves, the 4 celestial tools ceased attacking at the same time. The seals of light dimmed. Pa, 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 they dropped onto the ground, and this time, they were no longer stabbed slantingly into the ground, but were rather just lying there, as if they had lost all their life. Wang, an intent suddenly entered into Ling Han's mind, and took the form of a human figure. Ling Han was instantly shocked. This was the female celestial king that he had seen in the flow of time. Destined One, the fact that you can see me, and hear these words from me, means that not only do you have outstanding talent, you have also obtained devouring metal, the female celestial king said. This was only a sliver of intent of hers, so she was naturally communicating via divine sense as well. It is possible for you to become a heavenly venerable tier, and these 4 weapons that I have once used can also be fused by the devouring metal, helping it to advance to another stronger level. Senior, may I ask your name? Ling Han asked. Yet the female celestial king did not answer, and continued, on the surface, the celestial realm is peaceful and calm, but in truth, there is danger in all corners. There are terrifying enemies spying on us, and if you can become a heavenly venerate, I hope that you can plow the halls and sweep the pavilions, and resolve the foreign aggressions threatening the celestial realm once and for all. Additionally, my son has just been born, and I was killed. Being unable to watch him grow into a man is truly a regret. If you have the chance to see my son, help me pass on a message. Tell him that I miss him very much. My son's name is Yuan Sheng, and the person who has killed me bears the title Jiawu. When these words fell, the female celestial king's figure disappeared with a tremor. This was only a thought that she had left behind in the celestial tools that had not dispersed. Now that her will had been passed on, she was naturally gone from sight. Yet Ling Han was stunned into speechlessness. It can't be that this female celestial king is the karmic life heavenly venerable's mother, right? It was extremely possible. No matter what, the descendant of a celestial king should be extremely awesome, especially when this female celestial king was already so powerful herself. Then, among the more famous Yuan Shengs that appeared after, there seemed to be only a single karmic life heavenly venerable, right? Furthermore, if that was not the case, when Ling Han had almost crossed the ages, and managed to communicate with this female celestial king, why had the heaven and earth forcefully interrupted them? Because this implicated a heavenly venerate, an existence that surpassed regulations. Once any changes were made to the path of maturity of the karmic life heavenly venerable, a revolutionary change would take place in history. With such a powerful barrage of time, the whole realm could even collapse. Hence, the heaven and earth had to stop them. Moreover, the mother of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had been killed by Jiaowu Heavenly Venerate? Could it be that that old guy had predicted that the karmic life Heavenly Venerable would affect his future plans, and had thus wanted to get rid of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable in advance, even before his birth? But even if he was a Heavenly Venerate, he was unable to fully predict every scene in the future. Thus, he had killed the karmic life Heavenly Venerable's mother, yet the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had already been born. As expected, first, there was the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lo sniping the elites of the foreign realm, and after came the self-sacrifice of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, which delayed the foreign realm for another 8 epochs, proving that the Jiaowu Heavenly Venerate had not erred by making a move. He had just been slightly too late. This old bastard. Ling Han gritted his teeth in hatred. There were really quite a number of despicable deeds that Jiaowu Heavenly Venerate had done before. Ling Han himself had been hunted down by him before, and it was 2 times at that. Old grudges and new hatred added together caused Ling Han to grit his teeth involuntarily. Please don't worry, Senior. You are considered my grandmaster as well one. With yours and Master's hatred, added with my own, we have a 3-generation blood feud with the old bastard Jiaowu. I will definitely kill this villain with my own hands. Ling Han murmured. This was not just a word of comfort for the female celestial king, but was also a show of confidence. He would definitely surpass the Jiaowu Heavenly Venerate, and kill this old bastard. He stretched out his hand in a grab, and the 4 celestial tools all fell into his hand. The intent of the celestial king had dispersed, and these 4 weapons were presently only celestial tools. They could no longer be revived, and were damaged at that. There was no rush to refine them. Ling Han took another step forwards, and arrived in front of the celestial tree. He stretched out a hand, and grabbed out at that celestial fruit. Z. The celestial tree swayed lightly, and the lightning immediately became as dense as a spider's web, and then turned into a bolt of lightning that struck out at him. Ling Han hurriedly parried this blow with a fist. A feeling of electrocution immediately flowed through his body, causing his whole body to tremble. His bones had almost collapsed, even. What a strong attack. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Very rarely would a celestial tree be attack-focused, as they all usually tended to run quickly. However, this celestial tree was different. It did not flee, and was extremely ferocious. Do you think I'm scared of you? Ling Han stretched out his hand again, his body art unleashed to the extreme, a boundless aura spreading out from him. The celestial tree trembled, and that celestial fruit actually fell down. Ling Han was speechless. This celestial tree was completely a paper tiger. He had only just slightly revealed his strength, and it cowered, completely showing what a coward was like. However, since the celestial fruit had already been bestowed, Ling Han refrained from being too hard on it either. He stowed the celestial fruit away, and did not further make things difficult for this celestial tree. Now that this had touched his hand, it could only be ingested by him alone, or could be concocted into an alchemical pill. Using a naturally complete celestial seed to concoct an alchemical pill? That was too wasteful. Moreover, this celestial tree had only borne 1 fruit, and was also closer to the heart of the celestial path. Clearly, this celestial fruit was also more valuable. Ling Han did not hesitate, and swallowed it directly. Is it delicious? Hunyao came over, practically drooling. She did not feel jealous that Ling Han had obtained an even better celestial seed, but only felt that it was a pity that she was unable to taste this kind of delicacy. Not really. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and multiple flashes of lightning were wreaking havoc in his mouth presently, crackling and popping loudly. Hunyao was instantly amused, and laughed out loudly. She was a glutton, but there was lightning melded into a fruit. Just thinking about it, the taste could not possibly be anything close to delicious. And the people around were all looking at Ling Han enviously. Not only had this guy obtained a complete celestial seed, for damaged celestial tools had even entered his pockets. Even though these celestial tools were damaged, they could be returned to the furnace and reforged, and any one of them could unleash their divine might once again. Chapter 24-29, Killing a Celestial King. Though the celestial fruit had already been plucked, some people had still stayed behind. This was because the celestial tree was still there, slivers of dense celestial chi emanating from it. Celestial seed shards were also contained within, and they similarly were extremely beneficial. Ling Han was not interested in staying much longer here, though. He and the three women left the palace hall, and arrived in the mountains, continuing their journey by carriage. He related the message that had been passed through the divine sense of the female celestial king to the three women, and the empress and the others were all very shocked by this. There really were such coincidences in this world. While Ling Han had the divine demon sword fuse with the celestial tools to improve its grade, he took a peek into his mind. He presently had 2 celestial seed marks, and they both could form celestial seeds. Ling Han did not hesitate at all, and nurtured the first mark so that it truly became a celestial seed, because this was something that he was planning to use for an alchemical pill. And in this process, he could study all the secrets of this mark and grasp its essence. At the end, he would gather the essence of countless celestial seed marks, and form a truly flawless and perfect celestial seed. Celestial seed was not a solid object, but rather the seed of great Tao and an appreciation of Tao. The Empress and the others followed suit. They were presently nurturing the celestial seed marks in their minds first, and would trade it for a better one when they came upon one. Without a better one, when the 10,000-year deadline arrived, they would complete their breakthrough with this celestial seed mark. After all, it was a complete celestial seed, and using it to break through would mean that their battle prowess would definitely not be weak. The carriage swayed back and forth, and they set out towards the next city. In only over a dozen days, the divine demon sword had completely refined all 4 damaged weapons. On the surface, there didn't seem to be any change at all, but when Ling Han held it in his grasp, he got a clear feeling. The divine demon sword had become slightly stronger. It was mainly that the gulf between Celestial King tier and Heavenly Venerable tier was too wide, and it was possible that the divine demon sword needed several hundred to over 1,000 portions of divine metal to truly complete a qualitative change, but as long as it fused with an additional piece of divine metal, it would definitely enjoy a slight boost. But on the matter of nurturing their celestial seed marks, none of the 4 had achieved any great breakthrough. Even if they had exerted time acceleration effects on themselves, they needed at least 10 years of real time to develop their celestial seed mark for it to become a celestial seed. As they journeyed, the carriage came to an abrupt stop. "Greetings, lords." The shaky voice of the coachman rang out from outside. Ling Han opened the carriage doors, and saw that the coachman was practically lying prostrate on the ground, sprawled out, and 7 men were standing ahead of them, arms crossed behind their backs. All of them were entwined in multicolored light, and one of them was precisely the Blue North Celestial King. He had vanished for such a long time. As it turned out, he had gone to seek out help. Though Ling Han was only in the ascending origin tier, his own battle prowess was already at the Celestial King tier, and added with the aid of the divine demon sword, 2 to 3 first heaven Celestial Kings really weren't enough to take him down. Hence, the Blue North Celestial King could only journey further and get more help. Why were they all first heaven Celestial Kings? If a second heaven Celestial King moved, wouldn't it be an easy move to suppress Ling Han? Very simple. If he went to seek out a second heaven Celestial King, the Blue North Celestial King would lose all say, and what he most desperately hoped to obtain was Ling Han's spirit to pluck out the secret to his inconceivable strength. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and a disdainful expression appeared on his face. As great and noble Celestial Kings, you actually have to use an advantage in numbers to win. Hee, you guys are really honorable. When these words fell, all 7 great Celestial Kings looked furious. A mere ascending origin tier actually dared insult them to their faces? How outrageously brazen. This truly is a guy that doesn't know the rules, a Celestial King declared coldly. Ling Han looked towards him. This Celestial King was dressed in long purple robes, and had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He was lanky and tall in build, with a powerful and dominant bearing. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Old geezer, do you know how to talk like a human being?" The purple-robed celestial king couldn't stop his eyes from widening. "Brat, what did you say?" "Old geezer, not only can you not speak well, even your ears have a problem?" Ling Han scoffed. The other party had clearly come to snipe him, so what need was there to be polite any longer? There is no need to drop to his level. "We should just take him down," the Blue North Celestial King said impatiently. He still remembered how he had fled in disgrace, and how his own manor had been ransacked entirely by Ling Han. When he heard about this, he had really been close to passing out in fury. This was an extraordinarily great humiliation he had never experienced. "Brother Blue North, is this boy really so freakish?" a Celestial King asked. They really could not believe it. A mere ascending origin tier was actually capable of matching a Celestial King. Even though the Blue North Celestial King repeatedly said that this was not a joke, he still could not accept it. "That's right." The Blue North Celestial King nodded solemnly. If that had not been the case, would he have needed to get 6 helpers? Did they think that he did not want his pride? Ling Han stared at the Blue North Celestial King, and with a thought, the divine demon's sword was already grasped in his hand. His legs slightly bent, and he began storing up power. "This is that celestial tool." The Celestial King's eyes were all focused on the divine demon's sword, and their gazes were all filled with covetous desire. The Blue North Celestial King nodded. "This is indeed a celestial tool. I am not concerned with how you divide this celestial tool among yourselves, brothers, as long as you hand this boy over to me." Agreed. The other Celestial Kings all nodded. Shwa. Right at this moment, Ling Han had finished accumulating power, and with a sudden toss of his right hand, the divine demon sword shot out like an arrow, flying rapidly towards the Blue North Celestial King. This toss had incorporated all of Ling Han's power, and was further boosted with the regulations of time, so its speed had reached an indescribable level. More importantly, after the divine demon's sword had absorbed the 4 damaged weapons, it now actually possessed new might. In a mere flash, the divine demon's sword traversed through space, and arrived in front of the Blue North Celestial King, as if it had ignored all matters of distance. The Blue North Celestial King was petrified. If this was any other weapon or even a punch from another Celestial King flying towards him, he would be confident enough that he could preserve his life. It was only a matter of how serious his injuries would be. However, the divine demon's sword was too terrifying, and he had already experienced a loss before due to its might. He unleashed a roar. He no longer had any time to flee, and as he tried his best to bend backwards, he focused all his power into his forehead to defend against this strike. Pooh! The divine demon sword streaked past, and directly sank into the Blue North Celestial King's forehead. This stab went all the way to the end, and left only the hilt that was still sticking out of his forehead. This Celestial King stumbled, his face bearing an expression of absolute disbelief. It had only just been a short period of time, and he had actually been insta-killed with a single sword strike from Ling Han. Pang! He collapsed onto the ground loudly. Instantly, the heaven and earth paled. A shower of blood rained copiously, exuding endless grief. A Celestial King had died, and the heaven and earth grieved. The other 6 Celestial Kings were dumbfounded. Who could have imagined that Ling Han would move so decisively? He was clearly being surrounded by 7 great Celestial Kings, yet actually dared to take the initiative to make the first move, and it was such a fierce, domineering assault at that. He had killed a Celestial King with a single sword strike. They went through some slight recollection, and felt that though Ling Han's toss was filled with power, it could only catch a Celestial King off guard, at most. The true deadly weapon was the Celestial Tool itself. It had directly transmigrated through space, its speed so fast that even a Celestial King could not react in time. The Blue North Celestial King had really died for nothing. All 6 great Celestial Kings felt a sympathy that arose from seeing one of their peers killed in such a manner. In terms of strength, the Blue North Celestial King was definitely in no way inferior to Ling Han, yet he had still been killed with a single strike, which was something that even now, they found a little hard to accept. This divine sword is too extraordinary. But it was only a single instant, and an intense greed rose up in all 6 great celestial kings. In the hands of an ascending origin tier, this divine sword was already so powerful. Then, if it was them wielding it, just how powerful would its might be? Chapter 2430, Pseudo-Celestial King. The 6 great celestial kings all released battle cries, and pounced towards the corpse of the Blue North Celestial King at practically the same time. They naturally did not have their eye on what the Blue North Celestial King would have left behind, but rather wanted to snatch the divine demon sword that was still stabbed into his forehead. This was really a war of titans, all using their respective tricks. The 6 great celestial kings all used all the means at their disposal to ensure that they would be the first to reach it. Ling Han shook his head. What are you guys scrambling around for? With a hook of his finger, Xiao, the divine demon sword floated by itself, the blade of the sword exuding a terrifying might. It was like a celestial king unleashing his might. From the angle of a tool, the divine demon sword presently was only an 8-star pseudo-celestial tool. But even so, if Ling Han wanted to command it to move, it naturally was also a small matter. But in terms of sharpness, the divine demon sword was really too frightening. It had drunk the blood of celestial kings, refined divine metal, and as its murderous aura seeped out, even a celestial king would feel wary. As expected, the divine demon sword floated into the air, and wherever the tip of the blade pointed, every single celestial king felt a chill rise up in their hearts. Involuntarily, they took a step back. With a thought, the divine demon sword immediately shot back towards Ling Han. He stretched out a hand and grabbed it, and he now held the divine demon sword once more. He smiled calmly. Who else wants to commit suicide? The 6 great celestial kings all looked livid. The kind of might that the divine demon sword could unleash in Ling Han's hands was something that they had just witnessed with their own eyes. And if they were being honest, if this sword had been shot towards them, who would have had the confidence that they could manage to block it? Not even a single one. Hence, they all rapidly drew out the distance, and it was only in this manner would they feel a sense of security. Great and noble celestial kings, and it was a 6-against-1 battle at that, and they were actually on the defensive? It could not be helped. Who asked Ling Han to hold such a powerful weapon? Actually, the 6 celestial kings did not think that their combined forces would not be able to suppress Ling Han. As long as all 6 of them moved at once, Ling Han would only be able to handle one, at most, and were 5 celestial kings still not enough to suppress a single ascending origin tier? But the problem was, who would be willing to become the person to make the sacrifice? If Ling Han could read their thoughts, he would definitely scoff. Though his battle prowess had just barely reached the celestial king tier, that was the same for his defense. So what if 5 celestial kings barraged him at the same time? To cause a serious or even fatal blow to him was definitely not something that could be done in 2 or 3 moves. The 6 great celestial kings were all gloomy. At first, they had thought that it was too much of a fuss for 7 great celestial kings to join forces for the sake of a mere ascending origin tier. But they hadn't even started fighting, and already one of their number was killed by Ling Han. And now, they fell into such an embarrassing situation. How could they bear this? Faced with Ling Han's disdain, they could say nothing to refute him. Are we fighting or not? If not, then don't block the way, Ling Han stated evenly. Though these words weren't very polite, compared with his previous words, this line was much better. The 6 great celestial kings exchanged looks, and all of them shook their heads because none of them wanted to be the one to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of the others. Hence, their alliance naturally could not be established. Xiao, one celestial king, was the first to leave, which was followed by the second, the third, and in a mere instant, all 6 celestial kings had left. Ling Han did not become careless. The divine demon's sword was too desirable. Those 6 celestial kings would definitely not give up the matter so easily. They would definitely lurk in a dark corner somewhere, looking for a chance to make their move. They were celestial kings, the strongest beings of the celestial realm, and were equals to regulations themselves. Who would dare underestimate them? Continue the journey, Ling Han said calmly to the coachman. Yes, yes. The coachman was practically astounded by Ling Han now. He had shot a celestial king to death with a single strike, and sent other 6 celestial kings into leaving. This battle achievement was practically blinding. He hurriedly prompted the carriage, respectful to the extreme. Ling Han swept a glance at the corpse of the blue North Celestial King, and stretched out his hands to search for his belongings. As for the body itself, he did not touch it. After all, the blue North Celestial King was a human. Ling Han felt that using the former's blood to improve himself was a bit strange, and could not be accepted. This was unlike the ancestral kings of the foreign realm. He did not feel any kind of psychological guilt from using theirs. The carriage forged onwards, and arrived at the next city a few months later. However, there were no celestial fruits that just happened to ripen here. Hence, they continued their journey, heading towards the next city. It seemed like their luck had become bad. They had traveled to a few cities in succession, and still had not encountered the ripening of celestial fruits, and the time they had spent on the journey was already as long as 7 years. After reaching the next city, Ling Han decided to have the carriage stop, and no longer journey onwards. They found an inn, and began to nurture their celestial seed with all their efforts, increasing their own battle prowess. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had already passed. Ling Han and the others had already developed the celestial seed mark, and had also obtained all the secrets contained within. As long as they pushed it just that slightest bit furthermore, they would be able to advance into the celestial king tier. At this time, all of them stopped. They had further aspirations. The first celestial seed was far from reaching the level of perfection, and was not suitable to become their celestial seed. Ling Han began pill concoction. He had long since prepared the rest of the ingredients, the only thing missing had been the celestial seed. Before coming to the celestial path, Ling Han had only planned on collecting celestial seed shards and slowly accumulating them into a complete celestial seed, after which he would concoct a celestial king pill. Who could have imagined that they would actually be so lucky for all of them to have a complete celestial seed each so quickly, and with one extra at that. This was already enough to be used to concoct the celestial king pill. This was enough to make the majority of future celestial kings die of envy, because if one ingested the celestial king pill, their accomplishments would be eternally limited to the first heaven. This was too wasteful. Yet Ling Han was unconcerned. He took out the first celestial seed. It was no longer a solid object, but rather a complete spiritual mark. No wonder one would only be limited to the first heaven through ingesting the celestial king pill. That was because what was being branded was the understanding of great Tao belonging to another person, so how could they possibly take another step further, and produce a second seed? Under time acceleration effects, Ling Han completed the concoction of the celestial king pill only half a day later. He had succeeded, thought the completed pill had just barely attained 2 stars. He had almost failed. But at his first attempt concocting a celestial king pill, and one that was 5-star level at that, he succeeded. This was enough to show just how amazing Ling Han's skill in alchemy was. They ended their short period of seclusion, and continued onwards. Their stopover this time was definitely worth it, not because Ling Han had concocted the celestial king pill, but because a great improvement had taken place in the strength of the Empress and the others. They had officially leaped into Pseudo-Celestial king tier. Ling Han had fought them before. Without using any other methods, the Empress and Hunyo's vitality index could reach 4,800 points, and after consuming Crimson Demonic Earth, their vitality index could draw extremely close to 5,000, but it was still that little bit away. And in the case of Bewitching Maiden Ro, under normal conditions, her vitality index was around 4,700, and it would soar to 4,900 after consuming Crimson Demonic Earth, which was also very powerful. Now that their battle prowess had increased, they could go and obtain better celestial seeds. They realized that if that had not been the case, aside from someone who had freakish luck like Ling Han, who first became the overlord of a minor realm, then encountered Wally, and obtained the Dimension Scroll, allowing him to extract void particle energy and thus push his body art to the height of the Celestial King tier, the vitality index of other 7G Wooming would have been 4,700 at most, and this was taking the Crimson Demonic Earth into account as well. But with this kind of stepping stone now, there was now the possibility of obtaining a perfect celestial seed. They set out once more, and arrived at the next city, and it was here that Ling Han discovered the cultivators from the Western Celestial Realm. It was not that they could only meet cultivators from the Western Celestial Realm after having already traveled half the journey, but rather that there was not too much deviation after both sides entered into the celestial path, and that was why they were only able to meet here. Chapter 24-31, Wudi. After each taking their own path, the journeys of the cultivators from the Eastern and Western Celestial Realm all converged here. This place was called Splendor City, and it was guarded by an experienced Celestial King who had the title of Splendor. He was at the first heaven, though it was unknown whether he was accompanied by another Celestial King called Wealth One. Ling Han kept a low profile. He was sure that Ji Wuming, Jialan, and the other monarch stars had already obtained low-level celestial seeds, allowing them to cultivate to the Pseudo-Celestial King tier. In other words, their strength could now rival that of the Empress and Hunyo. If they further ingested the Crimson Demonic Earth, they could essentially be regarded as celestial kings already. He couldn't underestimate them. If he wanted to compete with them, he had to be ruthless, accurate, and swift. The four of them started to move quicker as they asked for information around the city. They discovered that there was indeed a celestial tree near the city. Moreover, the fruits of this tree were already nearing ripeness. However, the Splendor Celestial King had a son who wasn't very successful. After huge efforts, he had only just reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. His father cared for his son greatly, so he was intent on obtaining a complete celestial seed for him no matter what. Disregarding whether one could obtain celestial fruits for someone else or not, if others wanted to fight for the celestial fruits, they would have to go through the Splendor Celestial King first. Ling Han and the others were all brimming with confidence. Even though their vitality indices were all a little shy of the Celestial King tier, they were 4 people in total, so just how powerful would their combined strength be? Moreover, Ling Han also possessed a deadly weapon in the Divine Demon Sword. After learning of the celestial tree's location, they started to head toward it. In any case, the Splendor Celestial King wasn't shockingly domineering, so he still allowed others to cultivate in the vicinity of the celestial tree such that they could absorb some of the fragrance of the celestial fruit. After several hours, Ling Han and the others arrived on the bank of a lake that was situated in a plain. The lake wasn't large, and it was only 300 meters in diameter. There was a white lotus in the center of the lake, and around 3 meters of it sat above the water. Instead of calling it a lotus, it was much more apt to call it a tree. The white lotus had bloomed long ago, so it had already produced a seed pod that was as brilliant green as jade. However, it had only produced a single lotus seed, the sharp head of which looked like flowing gold. It radiated with a blinding glow. At a rough glance, this lotus seed was around 1 foot long. In fact, one could view it as a cob of corn. The banks of the lake were dotted with people, all of whom were absorbing the fragrance of the lotus seed. They would use this fragrance to condense a celestial seed within their bodies. However, where was the Splendor Celestial King? Ling Han glanced around, but he didn't find what he was looking for. Celestial kings were extremely unique, so they would stick out like a dazzling star no matter where they stood. He would have been able to locate him in a single glance. Right at this moment. Whoosh! A streak of black tore through the sky before coming to a halt above the lake, transforming into the figure of a middle-aged man. He was tall and slender, and dressed in a flowing gray robe. He radiated a profoundly powerful aura. Most importantly, a ring of fantastic iridescent light pulsated around him, making it seem as if he were one with heaven and earth. It was as if he were the heavens, and the heavens were him. His existence was such that no one dared to even fathom standing up against him. After all, how could one rival heaven and earth? He was none other than the Splendor-Celestial King. Ling Han's pupils contracted. This Splendor-Celestial King was even more powerful than the Blue North Celestial King. In fact, he was even more powerful than the 6 Celestial Kings that Blue North Celestial King had called over combined. This person had reached the pinnacle of the first heaven. His next step was to evolve with the help of a celestial fruit to advance to the second heaven. There were 9 heavens in Celestial King tier, and each step forward was like ascending the heavens. Whoosh! Another person descended. This was a wild-looking youth whose raven black hair billowed with the wind. There was blood in the corners of his eyes, yet he paid absolutely no heed to this. He roared with laughter as he said, "Lord Celestial King, your strength is indeed extraordinary. How admirable." Upon hearing this, commotion immediately rippled through the crowd of people around the lake. This person spoke with such arrogance. Even though he referred to the Splendor-Celestial King as Lord, his words didn't carry any semblance of respect at all. It was as if the two of them were on equal standing. However, one had to realize that this youth was only at the ascending origin tier. Ling Han was slightly astonished. It was clear that this youth had challenged the Splendor-Celestial King just then. Moreover, the youth had definitely lost, though he had only suffered some minor injuries. This was proof enough of his extraordinary strength. When did such a person appear in the celestial realm? "You're indeed extraordinary," the Splendor-Celestial King said in a solemn voice. "Lord Celestial King, heaven and earth possess their regulations. It's simply impossible for you to obtain this celestial seed. Why stubbornly insist on challenging heaven and earth? The path of celestial kings is to abide by the commands of the heavens. One mustn't rival the will of the heavens," the youth said. Everyone was astonished. These words wouldn't have sounded out of place if a 9th heaven celestial king had uttered them. However, coming from a measly ascending origin tier elite? How arrogant was he to speak like this? Perhaps he believed that he had the right to school celestial kings? Just who in the world did he think he was? However, the Splendor-Celestial King wasn't enraged. Instead, he nodded and said, "The strength of your esteemed father rivals that of heaven and earth. I gather that this is his comprehension?" "Indeed," the youth replied with a smile. The Splendor-Celestial King fell silent for a brief moment before saying, "Fine. I'll treat this as an act of goodwill and leave this celestial seed to you. When you meet your esteemed father, please greet him for me." "Definitely," the youth said with a beaming smile as he bowed in respect. The Splendor-Celestial King flicked his sleeves before tearing through space and instantly disappearing from above the lake. Gasp! Upon seeing this, everyone felt numb with shock. Who could have imagined this? This youth had actually convinced the Splendor-Celestial King to give up on the celestial seed? With just a few words? No, no, no. How could a few words have achieved this? On the one hand, the youth was indeed very powerful. He had fought against the Splendor-Celestial King just then, and his ability to make it out alive was already proof enough of his strength. On the other hand, his background was definitely also shocking. It was because of this that the Splendor-Celestial King had been willing to yield. Just who in the world was this youth? I've heard from others that there's a freak among the outsiders. Not long ago, he even defeated the Blue North Celestial King. I didn't believe this before, but now I believe it. If I recall correctly, this freak is called Ling something. Ling Han. Yes, 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 that's right. That's his name. This person is Ling Han. Everyone was engaged in spirited discussions. However, they had misrecognized this youth as Ling Han. The youth could naturally hear this, and his expression immediately fell dark. "My name is Wudi 1. I'm not some random trash called Ling Han." "What? He's not Ling Han. Commotion rippled through the crowd again. In other words, there was more than one freak in the celestial realm this time. A baleful expression spread across the Empress' face. This person actually dared to speak about her man like this? She strode forward, unleashing her profound aura that made her appear like a paramount goddess who peered down at the mere mortals. Pang, pang, pang. Her raging aura instantly slammed into the people around her, sending them flying. So what if they were at the pinnacle of the ascending origin tier? Before a mighty pseudo-celestial king, they were nothing but trash. Everyone was stunned to the core. Who in the world was this woman? She was as beautiful as a celestial maiden, and she was as mighty as a domineering emperor. Moreover, her strength was so overwhelming that it made them quake in fear. Wudi frowned upon seeing this. However, his brows quickly relaxed, and he said, "Who would have thought? In such a short amount of time, someone has already cultivated to the pseudo-celestial king tier. You're just like me, aren't you? You're unwilling to ascend using an inferior celestial seed, so you want to obtain a more perfect celestial seed. Haha. I like you." The Empress humphed coldly as she lashed out with her right hand. Boom. It was as if heaven were collapsing and earth were crumbling. It was as if the sun were dying and the moon were extinguishing. At this moment, her fury was unstoppable. This person actually dared to slander her man? He deserved death. Whoosh. Another figure dashed forward, throwing a punch at Wudi. This was none other than Hunyo. In her eyes, there was no such thing as rules and regulations. What one-on-one? Did this have anything to do with her? Nyo's Ling Han couldn't be humiliated by others. The two women unleashed their profound might, attacking Wudi in unison. They rarely teamed up, but after being around each other for so long, they had naturally developed some tacit understanding. Thus, their combined strength was unexpectedly powerful. Chapter 2432, Clash of Celestial Tools. Wudi was greatly astonished. The appearance of the Empress had already surprised him greatly. Now, however, another young woman who could rival the Empress had actually appeared. He was naturally as astonished as could be. These prodigies. There were far too many of them, no? He was supremely confident in himself, and he regarded himself as a peerless individual with no rivals. Fortunately, the Empress was a woman, and she was more so breathtakingly beautiful and noble. This satisfied him greatly. If he took her as his wife, wouldn't they then become a family? And now, another had come. Fortunately, this was also a woman. He unleashed a roar as he swung his fists and met their attacks. He didn't fear them at all. Pang, pang, pang. The three of them became locked in an intense battle. With just a single glance, Ling Han could already confirm that their battle prowess was all around 4,800 points. Among pseudo-celestial kings, this was already an outstanding result. In fact, it was only because they were monarch stars that they could reach this height. Thus, neither side could gain an advantage over the other. If Wudi summoned a celestial tool or whatnot, perhaps he would immediately achieve victory. However, Wudi kept refraining from unleashing a trump card. He continued to exchange blows with the two women. However, how could this rival the combined power of the Empress and Hunyo? Wudi gradually fell to a disadvantage. Everyone was rendered speechless with shock. Just then, Wudi had been extremely domineering, even managing to persuade the Splendor Celestial King to leave. Now, however, he was actually on the back foot. Even though the two women had teamed up, if their strength weren't up to par, there was no way they could have achieved this. If they weren't powerful enough, even dozens or hundreds of them wouldn't have been enough. Heavens! Just how many supreme freaks were on the celestial path? Even though Wudi was on the back foot, he didn't show any signs of panic at all. Instead, he roared with laughter, appearing wild and domineering. At this moment, he finally retrieved some crimson demonic earth, ingesting it with a gulp. A devastating aura instantly shook the surroundings. He was about to ascend to a new height. The Empress and Hunyo didn't dare to underestimate him. They both hurriedly retrieved and ingested crimson demonic earth. In this world, only Ling Han would be capable of battling against Celestial King tier elites without ingesting crimson demonic earth. Boom! The auras of the three people were like a tsunami, and it was as if they were all going to ascend to the Celestial King tier. They continued to do battle. Regardless of how powerful they had been just then, they had all been slightly short of reaching the Celestial King tier. After ingesting the crimson demonic earth, however, it would still be impossible for their vitality index to surpass 5,000. In other words, the greater one's battle prowess, the smaller the buff provided by the crimson demonic earth. The battle prowess of the three people had all been 4,800 to begin with, so theoretically speaking, this number should have exceeded 5,000 after ingesting the crimson demonic earth. Thus, their battle prowess was all identical at this moment. They were all at 4999. Fighting 2 against 1, the Empress and Hunyo naturally possessed the upper hand. They were in full control of the battle. Detestable! Wudi roared. A purple streak suddenly rushed toward him. Whoosh! The Empress and Hunyo were instantly pushed back. This was a golden-purple staff that was decorated with symbols. It radiated with an aura of age, yet it more so unleashed a sense of profound pressure. It was as if a paramount celestial king were about to step out from within the staff, crushing all opponents in his way. Celestial tool. This was definitely a celestial tool. Moreover, it was a celestial tool forged by a high-level celestial king. Perhaps it couldn't unleash its full might in Wudi's hands, but it would still be more than powerful enough to stun pseudo-celestial kings. They wouldn't dare to cross this celestial tool rashly. Hunyo humphed, and said, "How shameless. You can't defeat us, so you're summoning a celestial tool. Nyo looks down on you." Everyone was rendered speechless. They had already broken the rules by challenging him 2-on-1, yet she was now admonishing him for using a celestial tool. However, the Empress and Hunyo were far too beautiful, so beautiful that no one could bring themselves to blame them. They could only feel that this young lady was adorable and mischievous, and they all stood behind her in support. Indeed. As a man, you actually need to rely on a weapon? Is this anything to be proud of? And it's even a celestial tool. I look down on you. How disdainful. Wudi was about to explode in anger. Why don't you people try to battle against two people who are just as powerful as you? If he could rival them, he naturally wouldn't have wanted to summon a celestial tool. Fuck. This was a bunch of armchair commentators. Ling Han also frowned upon seeing this. The Empress and Hunyo were just a step away from advancing to the Celestial King tier. It was indeed time for him to equip them with celestial tools. Otherwise, if they came across opponents who were armed with celestial tools, they would definitely be at a huge disadvantage. At the very least, they would be extremely limited in how they could fight. The next time I obtain celestial tools and divine metal, I won't feed it to the divine demon sword, Ling Han thought to himself. Ugly woman, move aside. Let Nyo deal with him. Hunyo said to the Empress. If they fought 1-on-1, Wudi would most likely be too proud to use a weapon. However, the Empress completely ignored Hunyo. Instead, she reached over to Ling Han. Ling Han understood what she wanted, and with a shake of his arm, he immediately tossed the divine demon sword toward her. The Empress caught the sword. She then turned around to glance at Hunyo, saying, "Little girl, don't stand here and block me." Wayaya. Hunyo stomped her feet in anger. This woman was far too despicable. Everyone was rendered speechless by this scene. Just then, the two women had still been fighting side by side. Now, however, they were actually arguing with each other. Were they sure they weren't messing around? Hunyo angrily left the battlefield. With their strengths identical, the situation would become far too dangerous for her if everyone else had a celestial tool. She was truly eager for battle, and she was truly eager to play. However, she wasn't stupid at all. Ling Han, Nyo also wants a celestial tool. Hu Nyo said as she clung to Ling Han's arm and made eyes at him. Ling Han couldn't help but feel goosebumps. It was fine if Hu Nyo tried to come off as pure and innocent, as she simply needed to be herself. However, her trying to act seductive was truly a frightening scene. He patted her small cheek and said, "All right, the next time I obtain a celestial tool or divine metal, I'll definitely forge one for you." Only upon hearing this did Hu Nyo nod in satisfaction. She continued to hug Ling Han's arm, an expression of happiness on her face. The surrounding people were all filled with envy. Even though Hu Nyo seemed slightly unreliable, just how beautiful was she? Moreover, they had all witnessed her strength just then. She had yet to reach the Celestial King tier, yet she already possessed strength that could rival Celestial Kings. To be partners with such a beauty, how could they not be envious and jealous? Ling Han simply wore a faint smile as he endearingly patted Hu Nyo's head. He then turned his attention to the sky, where the intense battle between the Empress and Wudi had begun. Clang, clang, clang. The celestial tools clashed, unleashing bursts of blinding light. Moreover, the collisions were so loud that they were about to burst everyone's eardrums. Others couldn't see clearly, but Ling Han didn't have any trouble at all. This was because his body arts were far too powerful. The Empress hadn't gained an upper hand. However, she hadn't been pushed to her back foot either. Their battle prowess was far too close, and they more so both possessed celestial tools. Thus, victory would simply be decided by their performance. It wasn't long before they exchanged 1,000 blows. At this moment, both their auras started to weaken. The effects of the crimson demonic earth were about to pass. They both retreated 300 meters, taking a short break from battle. "Celestial Maiden, there's no animosity between us, and we've already sparred our fill. Why don't we shake hands and talk peace? How about we discuss cultivation over some tea?" Wudi said as he wore what he believed to be his most dazzling smile. The more he looked at the Empress, the more he liked her. However, the Empress wore an ice-cold expression as she pointed at Ling Han, and said, "Kowtow and apologize to my husband. Then I can consider allowing you to die a more painless death." Gasp. Everyone gasped upon hearing this. This woman was far too domineering. However, they quickly realized that this aura of dominance was a perfect match for her disposition. Wudi wore a confused expression. Since when had he offended her husband? However, after some careful thought, he immediately came to a realization. He wore a baleful expression as he looked toward Ling Han, saying, "So, it turns out that you're Ling Han." Chapter 2433, Meaningless Name. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You recognize me? I didn't before, and I had only heard about some arrogant and haughty person who would rely on their fortunes to even disrespect heavenly venerates." Wudi said with a cold chuckle. "I already became invincible several epochs ago, so in my eyes, you're nothing but trash." Hu Nyo couldn't help but giggle upon hearing this. "Keep bullsh asterisk ting, why don't you? A few epochs ago, you hadn't even become a celestial king yet. Who believes you?" Wudi was brimming with pride, and he said, "I was born 7 epochs ago, and I've already been invincible among the ascending origin tier for a very long time. However, my father determined that there would be an astonishing opportunity on this specific celestial path, so he sealed me away, waiting for this day to come." "Who's your father?" Ling Han asked. As if expecting this question, Wudi puffed his chest out and answered, "The Imperial Void Celestial King." Everyone wore an expression of realization upon hearing this. Looks of respect and reverence spread across their faces. In the past, few people had known about the existence of heavenly venerates. However, everyone had known about the most powerful celestial kings. For example, the strength of the Imperial Void Celestial King definitely ranked in the top 3. Ling Han scoffed upon hearing this. So it's that old bastard. You Wudi was instantly enraged. He pointed at Ling Han, and a baleful killing intent surged around his body. Is he not? Ling Han asked calmly. He picks on the weak, and he's as shameless as can be. If I ascend to the 9th heaven, I'll definitely behead him and use his head as a soccer ball. You're seeking death. Wudi roared. He immediately lunged at Ling Han, swinging his staff at his head. A sheet of purple light covered the air, causing the entire lake to ripple. However, no uncontrollable waves appeared. This was a lake that could birth celestial seeds, so it was naturally far from ordinary. Your sword. With a powerful toss, the Empress immediately launched the divine demon's sword toward Ling Han. Ling Han reached out with his right hand to catch the sword. Meanwhile, his left hand had already swung toward Wudi. You actually dare to challenge me with your measly strength? The regulations of space fluctuated, and Wudi was instantly restrained. The effects of the crimson demonic earth had almost completely worn off, and his battle prowess had already fallen back to just over 4,800. Meanwhile, Ling Han's battle prowess was at 4,900, so he naturally possessed a crushing advantage over his opponent. He suppressed Wudi with absolute ease. Wudi unleashed a violent roar, and the celestial tool in his hand instantly released a brilliant glow. Bursts of purple aura swirled around him. Pung! The regulations of space shattered, allowing Wudi to furiously charge forward. His celestial tool had carved a path for him, and he was now protected by a sheen of purple light. It was as if no attack could hit him. This was the might of celestial tools. Ling Han could suppress Wudi, but he couldn't suppress his celestial tool. As long as the celestial tool could continue to unleash its might, Wudi would be unaffected by Ling Han's attacks. Thus, even though Wudi couldn't unleash the full might of this celestial tool, just being able to use this ability alone already made him extremely frightening. Ling Han smiled faintly. He had already put on that celestial king tier ring. He hadn't fed it to the divine demon sword, because he had felt like it might come in handy. Refining it would have been a waste. Moreover, it didn't contain much material either, so it would have been little help to the divine demon sword. He threw a punch at the golden purple staff. Pung! There was a loud boom as a shock wave exploded outward, tearing apart space. This shock wave then rippled outward, violently blasting apart everything in its way. Wudi was forced to retreat several hundred meters. Blood poured from his shaking hands. He wasn't shaking because he was afraid, but rather because of the tremendous force of the collision. He wore an expression of shock. He had actually been overpowered by Ling Han. One had to realize that Ling Han had yet to activate his body arts. Otherwise, his celestial king tier strength might have directly blasted the staff into Wudi's head, instantly obliterating his mind. Ling Han retrieved his fist. The ring was small, yet it was able to block the terrifying destructive power of celestial tools. In any case, these celestial tools couldn't unleash their full might, so what was there to be afraid of? How's that? Ling Han asked. Wudi gritted his teeth in reply. Right now, he was unable to ingest any more crimson demonic earth. After all, ingesting it in quick succession would be an act of self-harm or even suicide. Moreover, he understood that Ling Han was even more powerful than him. The rumors weren't false. This young man was unbelievably terrifying. No wonder his father had warned him to be careful if he came across Ling Han. However, if he ingested the crimson demonic earth, what did it matter that Ling Han was powerful? At the most, his strength could only approach that of celestial kings. It would be unable to surpass this level. Thus, there was absolutely no need for him to be afraid of Ling Han. As long as he had enough time, he could once again ingest some crimson demonic earth. However, Ling Han had no intention of wasting time. He glanced at the golden-purple staff with a smile, and said, "This celestial tool is fairly decent." "Humph. Are you worthy enough to covet a celestial tool once used by my father?" Wudi said in disdain. He channeled his source power, rapidly healing his wounds. The Imperial Void Celestial King was incredibly powerful, and he had more so mastered many regulations. Celestial tools such as this staff had all been forged while he had been comprehending the regulations of metal. Now, however, there was already no need for the Imperial Void Celestial King to use celestial tools. This was because no celestial tool could match his strength. Meanwhile, in terms of heavenly venerate tools. Firstly, he didn't possess any devouring metal. Secondly, he didn't have the skill to forge such tools. Ling Han grinned with confidence, saying, "Before long, I'll force that old geezer Imperial Void to kneel before me and admit defeat." "In your dreams," Wudi shouted. His face was scrunched up in fury, yet he forcefully stopped himself from lashing out. This was only natural. He was still unable to ingest crimson demonic earth, so battling against Ling Han at this moment would be a terrible decision for him. However, would Ling Han care about this? He dashed forward, throwing punch after punch. Wudi hurriedly shot back in retreat. He knew that there was a slight gulf between him and Ling Han, so he would definitely be at a disadvantage if they exchanged blows head-on. Thus, he needed to buy some time. As long as he could drag things on until he could ingest the crimson demonic earth again, he could launch a furious counterattack and perhaps even kill Ling Han. However, Ling Han was already brimming with killing intent. He channeled the regulations one after another, unleashing a petrifying might. Fortunately, Wudi had the help of the golden-purple staff. Otherwise, he would have been killed by Ling Han within 100 strikes. A battle prowess gap of 100 points was like the gap between a monarch tier and an emperor tier. Ling Han roared with laughter, mocking, "You should change your name." His name was Wudi 1, yet he was retreating in disarray at this moment. Moreover, this was against an opponent at the same cultivation level. Wudi's face went red with embarrassment. At that time, he had indeed been invincible among his peers. No one at the same cultivation level could rival him. If not for the profound opportunity today, he would have become a 9th Heaven Celestial King a very long time ago. Would Ling Han have had the chance to act so wantonly before him? Wudi simply swung his staff to dispel the regulations. He remained silent no matter how Ling Han taunted him. However, Ling Han's attacks became increasingly powerful, and it was as if each punch could shatter heaven and earth. Wudi started to struggle more and more. Even though he continued to evade, just being scraped by Ling Han's fists would open gaping wounds on his body. Moreover, Ling Han was insanely fast, so if it weren't for Wudi's celestial tool, perhaps he would have already become a corpse. In any case, he was unaware of the freakish nature of Ling Han's body arts, so he refused to believe that the gulf between them was so great. He was convinced that Ling Han had definitely ingested some crimson demonic earth, and he was convinced that Ling Han was taking advantage of this fact to kill him as quickly as possible. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. Wudi gritted his teeth as he defended with all his might. He was the descendant of a top-notch celestial king, and he was also a freakish prodigy who had been invincible during his time. Thus, he naturally had his own outstanding talents and entire suites of celestial techniques that he could unleash. This was all to buy just a little bit of time. However, under the suppression of absolute strength, his desire was nothing but an unreachable dream. "You're far too shameless," he roared in fury. Ling Han had definitely told the Empress and Hu Niu to attack him on purpose just then. They had definitely attacked him on purpose to make him ingest some crimson demonic earth. Chapter 2434, Coming to the Rescue. Ling Han couldn't be bothered correcting Wudi. This man was a walking corpse, so was there any need to waste his breath? Ling Han unleashed his full strength, combining his body arts with his power of regulations. Even though his vitality index couldn't surpass 5,000, his battle prowess had indeed risen to a new height. Regardless of what Wudi did, he was unable to turn the tables. Ah! Wudi bellowed in anger. He was filled with rage. He was only a tiny bit away. He could almost ingest the crimson demonic earth again. However, even though he was so close, he was unable to hold on any longer. He was going to lose his life here. He was naturally unwilling to die here. He had been sealed for several epochs, and he had also been an invincible prodigy during his time. However, Ling Han's punches grew heavier and heavier, slowly forcing him to the brink. Pung! A fist swung over, and Wudi was unable to defend himself any longer. The fist instantly struck his forehead. With Ling Han's devastating power, this fist was definitely powerful enough to pulverize his head into pieces. Huh! Astonishment spread across Ling Han's face. Even though his fist had struck Wudi, it hadn't struck anything physical. It was the might of that celestial tool. Golden purple light pulsated, and energy that was far superior to the first heaven burst into the surroundings, rushing at Ling Han. Even though Ling Han had already had a bad premonition, and even though he had already channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, he still felt like his entire right arm had been shattered by the overwhelming collision. Moreover, his internal organs had also been severely wounded by this collision. He felt indescribably miserable. A paramount aura hung over the sky as a 9-colored iridescent light hovered above the staff, transforming into the figure of a middle-aged man. The Imperial Void Celestial King. Wudi was delighted upon seeing this. Even he hadn't known that his father had hidden a wisp of his intent in this celestial tool. Perhaps the Imperial Void Celestial King hadn't wanted his son to grow too dependent on him, so he had kept this a secret. However, this wisp of intent would be activated if his son ever encountered life-threatening danger. Ling Han channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, allowing his wounds to rapidly heal. However, he had been struck by a celestial tool, so his wounds couldn't heal immediately. He silently reminded himself not to underestimate others. Otherwise, he might truly lose his life due to carelessness. Ha ha ha! Wudi roared with laughter. Who could have imagined that the tables would turn so suddenly? Right now, Ling Han was severely wounded, and he could imminently ingest some crimson demonic earth again. Soon, it would be his turn to pummel Ling Han. Brat, don't be so full of yourself. Showing off will get you killed off, he taunted. Even though his father had only left a wisp of his intent, this was already enough to activate the celestial tool. Moreover, even though this celestial tool had been forged by the Imperial Void Celestial King long ago, he had already been a 9th Heaven Celestial King at that time. As such, this tool was profoundly powerful. With this celestial staff, he was essentially undying and invincible. Did he need to fear anyone? Ling Han smiled faintly. He refused to believe that the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could last forever. Thus, once this wisp of intent disappeared, he could suppress and kill Wudi just like before. He definitely had to kill him. To say nothing of Wudi's arrogance, just his relationship with the Imperial Void Celestial King was already reason enough. The same back at you. Showing off will get you killed off. Ling Han said. Die. Wudi roared as he swept his staff at Ling Han. Because he was no longer in danger of death at this moment, his staff also lost its might. After all, this was the celestial path, a place that celestial kings couldn't enter at all. In fact, only powerful 9th Heaven Celestial Kings such as the Imperial Void Celestial Kings could leave a wisp of their intent inside a celestial tool to activate it. Thus, this wisp of intent had naturally been extremely weak and fragile. It was only because of this that it had been able to deceive heaven and earth. Moreover, it was only natural that it would only activate when Wudi encountered life-threatening danger. Ling Han humphed as he replied with a punch. Pung! The celestial staff was immediately blasted back, almost prying itself from Wudi's grip. Wudi was astonished. He had thought that Ling Han was severely wounded and almost on the brink of death. After all, this was a celestial tool that had been forged by a ninth heaven celestial king. In fact, this tool could easily kill even first heaven celestial kings. However, Ling Han's powerful counterattack told him otherwise. It told him that Ling Han was far less affected than he had imagined. Quite the contrary, in fact. Ling Han's battle prowess was still near its peak. How was this possible? His father had personally forged this celestial tool. He was unable to accept this. Just what kind of freak was Ling Han? To say nothing of such a freak, he had been the only monarch star during his time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been invincible among his peers. Wudi stood with his staff. Right now, his task was extremely simple. He needed to buy enough time so that he could ingest the crimson demonic earth again. At that time, he could definitely turn the tables and achieve victory. This was because Ling Han had surely ingested the crimson demonic earth before him. Of course, his confidence was built on the assumption that no one could unleash a battle prowess at the Celestial King tier without ingesting crimson demonic earth. However, who told Ling Han to be such a freakish being? He was indeed such a heaven-defying existence. Ling Han continued his furious attacks. At this moment, his wounds had already been fully healed by the indestructible true fluid. He was still brimming with power. As long as the celestial tool didn't unleash its might, what challenge could Wudi pose? With his experience from just then, he naturally wouldn't put himself in danger anymore. He stood further away from Wudi as he attacked him. This caused his attacks to become weaker, but he was much more powerful than Wudi, so he could easily corner the latter and place him in a deadly situation. Because of this, the wisp of Celestial King intent in the golden-purple celestial staff was activated time and time again. After several dozen times, it was extremely clear that the Imperial Void Celestial King's projection was becoming fainter and fainter. This signified that the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could save his son several dozen times. Indeed, this was a reflection of just how much he cared about his son. However, who could have imagined that he would come across a freak like Ling Han on the celestial path? Before long, he had already been pushed to the brink of despair. Detestable. Damn it! Wudi roared. However, in order to train him, the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could only protect him. It wouldn't attack his opponent. Thus, he was completely unable to rival Ling Han. Perhaps he was truly going to die here? Wudi involuntarily shivered upon thinking of this. From birth until now, he had never considered that there would come a day when he would die. He had a near-invincible father, and he was more so a monarch star himself. He was a prodigy destined to become a ninth heaven celestial king. He didn't need to worry about immortals' tribulation at all. Now, however, the sword of death was already resting against his neck. Right at this moment, however, a look of delight suddenly washed across his face. This was an expression of raging delight. He could ingest the crimson demonic earth again. Your time is over, Wudi said with a loud laugh. He hurriedly retrieved and ingested some crimson demonic earth, causing his aura to instantly soar. He brimmed with power as he reached the Celestial King tier. Die! He unleashed a furious attack, his golden-purple staff dancing and weaving with domineering might. Right now, his strength was already incredibly close to that of celestial kings. Thus, he could naturally unleash some of the might of the celestial tool, causing his battle prowess to elevate to a new height. Ling Han stopped attacking with his fists. Instead, he started to wield his divine demon sword. Right now, the might of the golden-purple staff was far too great, so much so that the Celestial King tier ring was already unable to rival it. Thus, he had to unleash the might of the divine demon sword. Boom! 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 The two Pseudo-Celestial Kings did battle with their celestial tools, elevating the intensity of the battle to a new height. The ordinary cultivators below could only gawk on in amazement. Wudi became increasingly ferocious as he fought. After being suppressed by Ling Han for so long, there was a flaming ball of anger in his chest. He was yearning to suppress Ling Han so that he could finally vent his anger. However, Ling Han remained unafraid, with his stamina immense and boundless. After battling for another 30 minutes, Wudi's expression involuntarily changed. Why was Ling Han's battle prowess still so great? It wasn't declining at all. Fuck. He had already ingested the crimson demonic earth for a long time. Chapter 2435, Resolve. The more Wudi fought, the more apprehensive he became. What's going on? It wasn't like he hadn't ingested crimson demonic earth before. How could he not know about the duration of its effects? He had already struggled through his window of inability to ingest crimson demonic earth, yet Ling Han was still going on as incredibly strong as before? This made absolutely no sense. Perhaps Ling Han had ingested supreme crimson demonic earth? Strengthened crimson demonic earth? Right now, Wudi could only hold firm on his belief that he had ingested the crimson demonic earth later, so his battle prowess would definitely decline slower than Ling Han's. That being the case, he would definitely have the last laugh. The two of them continued to do battle. As he was someone who had been invincible during his times, Wudi's battle instinct and experience were tremendous. Moreover, his vitality index was also identical to that of Ling Han at this moment, and they more so both had a celestial tool in hand. Thus, he was naturally no weaker than Ling Han. The battle was fierce as they traded blows, back and forth. Blood would spray through the air from time to time, painting a magnificent yet cruel scene. Ling Han was boiling with fighting spirit as his divine demon sword danced through the air. He was truly battling to his heart's content. He was relying on his body arts, so he could continue to battle like this for essentially as long as he liked. However, Wudi's situation was completely different. The crimson demonic earth would only be effective for a limited amount of time. Moreover, even after ingesting the crimson demonic earth, his battle prowess could only near that of celestial kings, not surpass it. Even if he ingested it twice, risking self-harm, he wouldn't be able to change this fact. Wudi's battle prowess started to decline again. He was astonished, furious, and terrified. This was inconceivable. This was unacceptable. How could such a freak possibly exist? Why you? Just what kind of technique did you use? He asked. He didn't want to die a confused death. Ling Han smiled in reply. Did he have an onus to explain this? You're about to die, so why do you need to know so much? Wudi's face flushed beet red. Back then, just how domineering had he been? He had crushed his opponents, and others could only prostrate themselves before him. Now, however, Ling Han was actually viewing him as a walking corpse. How could he accept this? He gritted his teeth as a thought flashed through his mind. If he were about to die anyway, what use was a grand opportunity? Wudi unleashed a loud bellow. Boom! A devastating aura erupted from his body. This was the aura of a genuine celestial king. Firstly, he didn't want to die. Secondly, there was a ball of raging anger in his chest. Thus, he decided to ascend to the celestial king tier. There was still an opportunity here, that being a flawless celestial seed. If he obtained it, he could near the fundamental source of heaven and earth. Upon becoming a ninth heaven celestial king, he would have a sliver of hope to become a heavenly venerate. Even though this would only be a sliver of hope, it was still enough to elicit envy and jealousy from the other celestial kings. To mention no one else, even the profoundly powerful Imperial Void Celestial King was still unable to take this critical step. It was also because of this that the Imperial Void Celestial King had sealed his single child for several epochs. It was for no other reason than to obtain this astonishing opportunity. However, Wudi couldn't wait any longer. After all, what use was a celestial seed to a dead person? He roared in fury, sending waves of devastating energy into the surroundings. His celestial seed mark transformed rapidly, growing into a true celestial seed. Ling Han frowned upon seeing this. If he allowed Wudi to truly become a celestial king, with his aptitude of a monarch star, his battle prowess would most likely soar to the second heaven. Add to that his celestial tool, and his battle prowess would become unimaginable. At that time, to say nothing of killing Wudi, Ling Han wouldn't even be able to rival him. He would become the one fleeing for his life. His only option was to kill Wudi before he ascended. Ling Han's gaze was baleful, and he showed no hesitation as he furiously lashed out. He decided to prevent Wudi from breaking through. "You can't stop me!" Wudi roared. He was a monarch star, someone destined to become a ninth heaven celestial king. Traversing the celestial path was only to complete a process, and he could easily condense a celestial seed and complete his ascension. Moreover, he had already obtained a complete celestial seed mark long ago, and he had also fully comprehended this mark. It was only because he yearned for this flawless celestial seed that he had held back from ascending for so long. He had simply used his celestial seed mark to become a pseudo-celestial king. Now that he was unleashing his cultivation, ascending to the celestial king tier was naturally an easy and smooth process. Boom! Bursts of powerful energy erupted from his body. At the same time, dark clouds gathered in the sky, forming heaven's calamity. Ling Han couldn't stop this. Right now, Wudi had truly gained the strength of a celestial king. Even though he had yet to fully ascend, there was already no need for him to consume the crimson demonic earth to maintain his battle prowess. Crack! A bolt of lightning cracked down, transforming into a giant lightning person as it attacked Wudi. This was the true battle prowess of a celestial king. It was as terrifying as could be. Ling Han stopped his attacks. If he continued to attack Wudi, that would be equivalent to becoming an enemy of heaven and earth. At that time, he would also be targeted by heavenly tribulation. Wudi also understood this, so he focused his full attention on facing the heavenly tribulation. He was a monarch star, but he still needed to draw on his full power to face this devastating heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, he might be pulverized into ashes at any moment. Ling Han turned his gaze to the center of the lake. Whoosh! He immediately dashed over. Since he couldn't stop Wudi, he might as well obtain the celestial seed first. In your dreams. Wudi was surprisingly still watching Ling Han, and upon seeing him dashing toward the center of the lake, he immediately lashed out to stop him. Ling Han humphed, and said, "You truly think that I don't dare to face the heavenly tribulation?" He brandished his divine demon sword as he charged at Wudi. At the same time, he used his divine sense to communicate with the Empress and the others, telling them to obtain the celestial seed. Meanwhile, he would hold Wudi back. With Wudi's personality, he would most likely prefer to destroy the celestial seed than let it fall into the hands of someone else. The three women immediately heeded his call, dashing toward the center of the lake. However, they were all extremely careful as this place was definitely brimming with danger. Otherwise, this celestial seed would have been collected long ago. "You dare?" Wudi said with a humph. He threw a punch at the three women, with its might as tumultuous as the seas. Ling Han immediately slashed down, extinguishing Wudi's attack. He was filled with haughtiness as he said, "Your opponent is me." Detestable. Wudi roared. However, Ling Han was indeed powerful enough to rival him. Wudi's eyes were spitting flames. However, he abandoned his attempt to stop the Empress and the others. Once he became a celestial king, he would possess a magnificent power. At that time, he could dispose of Ling Han and the others. As such, what did it matter if they obtained the celestial seed? With this in mind, he turned his full attention to the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han was also forcefully dragged into the tribulation. Another bolt of lightning cracked down from the sky, transforming into a terrifying giant as it launched a flurry of ferocious attacks at him. However, Ling Han was unfazed as he clenched his left hand into a fist. Meanwhile, he continued to attack Wudi with the sword in his right hand. He was going to disturb him no matter what. When ascending, who didn't yearn for an absolutely peaceful and quiet environment? Facing heavenly tribulation was as dangerous as could be. Perhaps 50% of people could ascend, but many others would be killed when facing heavenly tribulation, rendering all of their efforts futile. With Ling Han disturbing him, the pressure on Wudi became immense. Not only did he have to battle against a lightning giant, but he even had to facilitate the growth of his celestial seed. These two tasks already took up most of his attention. Now, he even had to defend against the ferocious attacks of Ling Han. As such, he was naturally in a dire situation. Moreover, his opponent was far too powerful. Ling Han was wielding a celestial tool, and he was powerful enough to threaten his life. Why wasn't Ling Han afraid of the heavenly tribulation? Wudi couldn't understand this. One had to realize that the heavenly tribulation targeting Ling Han was no weaker than the heavenly tribulation that was targeting him. That being the case, how could Ling Han still find the strength to attack him? This was naturally because of Ling Han's freakish physique. He could easily endure several hundred attacks from First Heaven Celestial Kings. Even if you become a Celestial King, you'll become the weakest one possible. Ling Han said calmly. His voice was filled with a domineering aura. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.